across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer, rapidly approaching 3 minutes past 10 o'clock. And whether you're listening on DB Plus Radio or your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, boy, have I got a show for you today. We will be talking, among other things, about, people, a man has heckled Rachel Reeves. Isn't that awful? But is she right to say he's un-British? Love to hear your thoughts on that. We're going to discuss that 5p cut on fuel duty. But by the way, they're just extending the freeze, which everyone knew they would do anyway. They're only extending it till December. They probably won't put it up again in December because politically it's virtually impossible to do that. But should we be grateful for such small things, especially as the Chancellor's also announced this plan to drive down the cost of our weekly shop, slashing tariffs on more than 100 items? Do you know how much better off we're going to be per household because of that? That great Summer of Saving giveaway? 10 pence each household a week. That's it. I mean, why, Madam Ambassador, you are spoiling us with your largesse. Plus, we'll be talking about those Russian fighter jets repeatedly intercepting a British surveillance plane over the Black Sea in a series of dangerous flybys, 20 feet away from an RAF jet. A little bit worrying that. Plus, the migration figures that have come out just half an hour ago, showing that, the biggest fall in net migration for a long time. We are looking at 171,000 fall. I mean, yeah, it all sounds great. The trouble is, an awful lot of that fall, well, so it falls to 171,000, it's a fall of 48%, almost halving on the previous year, most of it is down to Rishi Sunak's policies when, after the horror of the Boris wave and the huge numbers we saw then, completely against the will of the British people, we've then seen Rishi Sunak pull his finger out and deal with the migration, particularly from outside Europe. But actually, a heck of a lot of it is some 240,000 because it's net. It's the numbers coming in minus the numbers leaving. 246,000 Brits, a lot of them young people, professionals, highly qualified, ambitious, want to start businesses, want to do well in life, leaving this country to work abroad somewhere where their talents will be appreciated, where working hard rather than ticking a diversity box is what will get you ahead, and not paying sky-high taxes on everything that they do. We are losing our brightest and our best, and we're importing who? Well, I mean, the reality is an awful lot of the people we import to work here, we might even be on a skilled visa, but they ain't earning even average salaries. We are going to be supporting these people. This is going to be hailed as a success. It is not a success. It's not as awful as it was. That's the best you can say about it. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Those net migration figures, we'll talk about those in more detail, but also about the Chancellor Rachel Reeves. She told a white van man who heckled her over the government's failures at a petrol station yesterday that he was not very British. What's your reaction to that? 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls to charge of the national rate and text cost one standard network rate message. Love to hear your thoughts on that. Philip Ingram, MBE, former senior military intelligence officer, joins us today. Hello, haven't seen you for a little bit.
I know,
lovely,
I wasn't here
to
last
see you.
week.
Yeah. As always, the quiet news day with Rachel Reeves. I can't hear it. She and Starbuck, I just can't do them. I just can't do their voices. I'd rather hear that man swearing any day of the week than listening to her, and especially her pathetic put down. But as always, I mean, we will get to his migration figures because they've just come in and we're going to get to them. But there's been a lot of, the usual suspects, the ones who are remarkably quiet when Nigel Farage has stuff thrown at him or thrown over him, or often finding it funny. Those ones always get in an absolute tears if anyone shouts at particularly a Labour woman. Yep. Now, this man did swear. He said the F word.
Oh, dear.
No one's ever heard that word before.
Yes.
But here's the thing. We're going to play you the video if you have lived under a rock in the last 24 hours and have not seen the video. We have to leave that out. And understandably, it's not right not to have to hear that word. However, she is a politician. She has an impact on people's lives. I would say largely a negative impact on people's lives, particularly people who work for themselves, like Mr. White Van Man. We don't know his name yet, who heckled her. He didn't abuse her. He just said the F word in one of the things he said and told her they were useless, and then asked whether or not he would get locked up for having England flags on his van, fluttering from his van, because frankly that's how a lot of people feel in this country right now. And then she came back with the worst put down I've ever heard in my life. So let's have a watch and a listen to what happened yesterday.
Keir Starmer, we're going to get arrested. We've got English flags on here, Rachel. We're going to get arrested. You're ruining the country. Get Keir Starmer out. Look, England flags. You're useless. Labour parties are useless.
I love our country, and one of the things about our country is good manners.
I think, do we just cut it off at the not very British? Can we extend that video, please? I don't know what's happened with that cut. Not very British.
Not very British.
Not very British.
Yes.
I mean, OK, one should be polite. OK, good manners. But when else do people get a chance to speak directly to the Chancellor? Now, this man did. He'd walked past me. He was paying for his petrol, and he'd gone into the pay for petrol, and then he was in his van, and then he drove past as well. He wanted to have his say, and he's angry, and rightly so. I think the cost of living, the taxes on business, and also the culture wars on basically people, frankly, just wanting to be proud of their country. I think he's got everywhere. I thought her put down was pathetic. But he's right. I mean, you're ruining the country. Yeah, get Keir Starmer out. Well, that's what half the Labour MPs think and half the Cabinet thinks. Am I going to get arrested for England flags? An understandable sentiment. You're useless. The Labour Party's useless. Is there anything there that's not a fair comment?
Yeah, perfectly fair comment. And I've seen your Labour MPs coming back and calling him misogynistic. And
whenever it's a woman, it's misogynistic.
It's always misogynistic.
First woman Chancellor, Philip. First woman Chancellor.
And she was doing a staged piece to camera to try and suggest that not putting another 5p on fuel duty is actually saving us money. Well, no, it's not. If she wants to save us money in fuel at the minute, she could cut the VAT rate that we're having to pay.
This, one of our sister organisation is the Sun newspaper. They've been campaigning on this, and it's a good thing. And if we didn't have the campaigns, you would not have these cuts. 5p on fuel duty makes a difference. But again, as you say, it's all her choice. You don't get credit for doing it.
Exactly.
But this is the extraordinary thing. She's in a public place. She's surrounded by people. I mean, spoke to people who were there because it was a pooled interview. There were about 15 people around her. Quite a lot of them, most of them are men, including her 2 close protection officers. She's chosen to be in a public place. Then people will talk to you, love.
Correct.
And they should
do.
If she was walking along on her own, just minding her own business, going to the corner shop, then I would have an issue with it. She's at work at that point and doing a job which impacts that man and millions of other people. And I'm sorry, if you don't want to get heckled at and shouted at in the street when you're doing your job, do your job better, love.
And White Van Man didn't invade her space. He didn't come and put his face in. He didn't threaten her.
He didn't tell her to F off or anything like that.
No, he was talking about the Labour Party. He was talking about her in her position as Chancellor, for her professional position. He was perfectly entitled to do what he did. She, was she entitled to stand in a public space and create so much disruption around the public pavement? Surely that's an offence in itself.
Well, presumably, I mean, whether she was, I don't know if she was on the pavement, on the actual garage forecourt.
Did you get permission from the garage owners to do it?
Who knows? But it's interesting, she says, I love our country. One of the things about our country is good manners. And that is true.
Yeah, it is true.
And a lot of us would like more of that enforced, frankly. Not very British-headed. I mean, and a lot of people on her side of the debate going, well, it's a really good point. But I mean, telling somebody,
define it.
telling a man who clearly, runs his own, I mean, I'm going to guess, runs their business, at the very least, gets paid only when he goes to work.
Supports England football team.
I don't think he's a public sector worker. We've got the World Cup coming up in just a few weeks' time. At any day of the year, I think you're entitled to fly your national flag. Yep. To say to that man, because he's complaining about her doing bad at her job, which is the general view of literally 90% of the population. The other 10% are just too stupid to realise or on the payroll. That he's not British. Yeah. I think it was she could have said, don't be so rude, or she could have said, come over here, talk to me one-on-one and let's debate it, if she had any gumption. But she knows she hasn't got anything to stand on.
Or she could have made a joke about it and said, there's one voter I'm not going to get, or something like that.
Put him down as a maybe. That's the joke. I'll put him down as a maybe.
Exactly. But, she can't communicate. She doesn't come across well. It's not just the tone of her voice. She can't think on her feet. And she proved it once again. Bright. She couldn't think on her feet. Keir Starmer can't think on his feet. He's a poor communicator. We've got people at the top of our government who cannot communicate. And if you can't communicate, communicate. That's your primary role.
Yeah, but also not good. I wouldn't mind if they were good at the job and then was a bit rubbish about communicating. That's what they think. That's why they think Andy Burnham's the answer.
Yeah,
the great white hope up north.
He can communicate.
He can communicate. But they think that the policies are largely okay or should move to the left even further.
Yeah.
I don't think they have
I don't
correctly...
think they've realised that.
Well, the solution to us having a cost of living crisis, and as we know, we saw inflation, it's coming down, but but only because of energy price caps. And that energy price cap's going to end in July, and our bills are going to go up. And by the way, most people are paying on direct debit, and you're paying the same in the summer as you pay in the winter, so you don't get this horrific bill around January and February in one go when you're trying to pay that out of your wages, which, funnily enough, don't go up at the same time as your heating needs go up. But their suggestion early in the week. So we got the fuel duty, we got that freeze extended, but only until December. Who knows what happens then? Who knows if she'll still be Chancellor then? God forbid. God forbid it could be worse than that. We've got there was talk about some sort of voluntary price cap on goods at the supermarket. Your face is a picture there.
The Russians tried that.
Yeah, exactly. The Bank of England has told her that was a bad idea. The supermarket said it was a bad idea. They make a tiny percentage in profit, 3-4%. Don't interfere with the businesses that work. That's out of the window. We won't really think of it, they say. So instead, they're going to give free bus travel to 5 to 15-year-olds for 1 month in August. So families can get away and do things. One of the things that Rachel Reeves has said, so they can go to the cinema or something. And it's like, have you seen the price of cinema tickets, love? You think that getting free bus travel is going to make a difference? And it's only 5 to 15-year-olds, so leave your 16-year-old at home. They don't get it. But also, they're going to lower the tariffs on a number of goods, which is going to basically cut lower costs for people. But as I just pointed out, we are looking at the equivalent of 10p a week off your weekly shop for the average household. I mean, I'm sorry, they're taking the mick out of us.
Oh, completely. But, again, they describe this free bus travel. It's not free. The taxpayer's paying for it. And there's quite a simple choice here. What are the kids going to do? Not all of them, but a minority are going to do. They're going to get together as little gangs because they've got nothing else to do. They're going to go into the centre of towns because they can do it for free. Yep. And they're going to rob the shops.
Well, so they're bad enough on the buses round my way, to be fair.
We're paying for that rather than paying that little bit of extra money for the police to stop these little bees from robbing the shops.
Yeah, I don't know what that word was going to be, but I'm sure I would have agreed with it.
Yes.
Genuinely, the last few times I've been on buses, I'm just like, I'm just going to get off and walk.
Yeah.
Because
I don't take buses because of the youth that's on it.
No, exactly.
And the disruption and the abuse that you get.
Yeah, and the poor drivers. No, absolutely.
I'm afraid I don't keep my mouth shut whenever they're there. I tell them off, but I do get worried whenever I see them reaching for their pockets and blades and everything else.
Absolutely. So no one's very impressed with that. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that and all of that. I mean, again, this the fuel duty cut. We found that out from the Prime Minister. This is a classic, by the way. That if any taxes go up, it gets announced by the Chancellor. If anything is going to go down, the Prime Minister gets to announce it, which you've got to see the funny side of that. Let's also talk about these migration stats that have just come in just before we came on air. So net migration has fallen to 171,000. That's a fall of 48%. It's almost half on the previous year. So that's yay! And they'd fallen last year as well. Good. But we know the main reason they fell. This is mostly migration, people arriving from non-EU countries, because we saw that absurd, outrageous, I would say immoral from Boris Johnson, an absolute breach of manifesto pledges, Boris wave, where we saw, I think it was 1.2 million people, largely from outside the European Union, coming to this country, net migration around the 800, 900,000 mark. When this became news, and the Home Office at the time, the Tory Home Office went, we had no idea. Well, you handed all the sodding visas out. You'd think you'd know how many had turned up. What is passport control like these days? We know that the vast majority of those people were dependents, were not workers, and the majority of those were going to be earning less than average salaries. Even those who were supposedly on skilled worker visas were doing jobs like working in care homes. I have an aunt in a care home. The ladies who work there are absolutely lovely, but I'm sorry, let us not pretend that these people are astrophysicists or engineers or doctors. They are lovely people doing very, very worthwhile work. It is not well paid, and it is not in the sense of being technically highly skilled work. You need to be talented to do it, but it's not. I'm sorry, our economy is not going to boom because we import 100,000 people to work in care homes.
Can I put this 171,000 context? It's Oxford. The size of the city of Oxford. Or, for those that are on the other side of the country, Telford.
Yeah.
So that putting it into perspective, yes, it's good that it's come down, but part of the reason why it's come down is those exceptionally skilled people that are coming in have gone, oh, the country's a basket case. We're going to be taxed to hell. We're not going to be able to make our money and do what we want to, so we're not coming in. Whereas those at the lower levels who are relying on benefits to help support them are going, oh, well, we can still get a benefit, so we're coming in. So we're bringing in, the City of Oxford as benefit.
And are we building enough houses for the City of Oxford? I mean, that is the extraordinary thing. We're simply not. And we're also looking at, again, this is net migration. So you think, it's gone down. 246,000 Brits have left the country. Yeah. 246,000. Now, they are largely people with literally the get up and go get up and go.
Who've got money, who aren't now paying tax.
Want to make money.
Yes.
Now, OK, I'm not a big fan of people going, I made a load of money, I'm going to head to Dubai and I'm going to pay no taxes and good for me. But we're talking about young people who want to start a business, want to make a future, who want to get ahead based on hard work, not on do you tick that box? Are you this? Are you a particular ethnicity or sexuality? Or sex? Do you tick that box? They just want to get ahead based on their own merits and their hard work, and they want to be duly rewarded for it. Now, I'm afraid that is not what we offer young people. I'm living in fear. The people that we are losing are first-rate people who are going to make riches for themselves, their families and our country and pay a shed load of tax, create jobs. And we are losing those people because they are now working abroad and paying tax wherever they're paying abroad. And we are importing people who are going to be a net cost to our country. I don't think the figures work out. I don't think the government, when people who are largely pro-migration say, but these figures are good, why are you so upset about it? It's because
the balance is wrong.
In 2010, we were promised net migration in the tens of thousands, under 100,000. Under 100,000. And we expect that the people who come here are people who are going to contribute to our economy. That is still not the case. It's not good enough.
Yeah, well, that's only 17 tens. That we've got coming in. But no, the policy is wrong, and it is getting the balance wrong, because, as you said, it's those that have got the get up and go, the wherewithal, the education that can get the visas because they've got the skills that other countries want to go to those countries to make their money, who are going to do it. It's not the people who haven't got the skills, who can't get the visas, who are living off benefits here, who are leaving the country. So the cost to the fewer number of taxpayers that are remaining here is going up, and the ability to get more people paying higher levels of tax is going down because they're going off elsewhere.
It's so depressing. I'd love to hear your thoughts on those latest figures. Give us a call on that as well. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. I must ask you about, just briefly, these accusations of Putin's reckless fighter pilots flying just 20 feet from RAF spy planes in the Black Sea. I mean, not only the danger to the pilots. I mean, that's more than a near miss. I mean,
and the crew. There's a lot of crew in the river
on these planes, but also just the risk if something does go wrong of. Well, people are saying, World War III breaking out. What are they thinking?
We go back to 2022, and a Russian fighter pilot accidentally loosed 2 missiles at an RAF rivet joint.
The way you do.
Because there was a technical anomaly, is what the Russians said. Nearly shot them down. And then the RAF had all of the rivet joints flying in the Black Sea escorted by Typhoon fighters. Yeah. They seem to have stopped that. But the threat hasn't gone away. The Russians are known for carrying out these sorts of reckless activities. And I suspect this is down to the fact that defence can't afford to put 2 fighter jets with every rivet joint that's down there.
But what would happen if our plane did get forced down?
Oh, we'd write a stiff letter to Moscow. So we'd lose a lot of our service personnel. The Prime Minister would stand up and say, he supports our defence. And pay tribute to them and write a stiff letter to Vladimir Putin.
Might even call in the ambassador. Don't. It's just so painful, isn't it? What did you make of Kemi Badenoch at PMQ's yesterday? Discussed it on the show when it happened at PMQ's, accusing Keir Starmer of basically buying dirty Russian oil. There was an announcement last October that the government didn't actually do it. They were going to sanctions, secondary sanctions. So you can't buy Russian oil or gas, but you can basically buy it from India after they've sold it to India. India has dealt with it and done whatever needs to be done to refine it, turned it into aviation fuel or diesel, and then we can buy it. And we have been buying it en masse. And the plan was that was going to be stopped. Yes. They decided not to do that. Yeah. I think Kemi Badenoch quite rightly called out the Prime Minister on it. But that we are basically helping pay for weapons from America for the Ukraine war effort against the Russians. And now we're buying oil and gas effectively from India, well, from Russia via India, which is helping the Russian effort, so they can kill. And she talked about Ukrainian soldiers. They target civilians, the Russians do. Far more, by the way, than Israel does, for those paying attention at the back.
The bottom line is this change in government policy, which there was a hard line stop. We're not going to buy anything that's come from Russia, whether it is directly or whether it has been indirectly put through another refinery and then sold to us. That hard line stop has now been watered down. And that watering down means that more Russian oil can be sold to those refineries, and we're going to buy the byproducts from that. So it means that there is money going to Russian weapons that are killing Ukrainian military and civilian personnel. And that is disgusting. And Keir Starmer tried to justify it and said everyone else is doing it. The whole of the EU is not doing it.
No. Well, there's been a lot of the EU has been doing. Germany was quite happily carrying on buying Russian gas
were, but on this particular one,
I don't care what the rest of the EU is doing.
They haven't eased the sanctions. The Americans are doing it, but that's Donald Trump and Donald Trump's relationship with Putin.
We wouldn't need to do this if we didn't have to rely on foreign imports so much because of their policy.
At the same time, they're sanctioning North Sea oil effectively. Yeah. It's ridiculous.
Well, as Kemi Badok rightly pointed out, why is Russian oil okay, but oil from Aberdeen isn't?
Yeah, and it's less green, because think of how far it has to be transported to get. It's
Philip,
disgusting.
you are making the absolutely fatal mistake of trying to apply logic and facts to this argument.
I know.
That will never do.
I was extremely frustrated yesterday. I was shouting at the television as I was,
I can imagine.
Or shouting at my phone as I was watching Kemi Badok. But watching Keir Starmer try and justify it, and watching his body language, in his mind, he thought he was doing things right. He just didn't get it.
But he was just going into a bit of processology. He loves that. Can I also ask you, in Makerfield by-election, Andy Burnham apparently is backing Shabana Mahmood's immigration changes, and these are not popular with Labour backbenchers. I mean, they're bare minimum. You don't have a right to apply for British citizenship 5 minutes after you've arrived. But I mean, we're looking at really basic stuff. Andy Burnham lost the support of the Dragons' Den star Duncan Bannatyne. We talked about it on the show yesterday over his views on trans. We've had Bridget Phillipson. Finally, we are over a year since the ruling from the Supreme Court banning trans women, let's call them what they are, men from women's people say female toilets. No, from women, banning men from women's toilets, which, by the way, was always the law. Whether the man thinks he's a woman, dresses as a woman, or claims he's a woman, doesn't matter. You're still a man. You don't get to go to women's toilets. It's interesting. And Burnham is a lot of things. I mean, he's got this sort of wonderfully sort of varnished glow around him. He's the answer to everything. But he's just not been under any scrutiny at all.
No, he hasn't. And I think this varnished glow around him is because he's anyone but Keir amongst his voters, and as soon as he's the light is shone on him, we start to see the real Andy Burnham coming through. I think people are suddenly going to go, oh crikey, actually maybe he's not going to be better. Well, he'll communicate better, but the policy is going to still be the same or worse, and he can't decide. I understand his comments about trans were made before the Supreme Court ruling. But what he should have come out was very clearly and very quickly and said, since I made those comments, the situation has been clarified by the Supreme Court. But I fully support.
He was still wrong.
He's still wrong. But he hasn't done it.
I'd like to point out that Carl Turner, who was on the show yesterday, actually criticising Wes Street and Andy Burnham over comments on these things. But it's interesting, actually, going back over Carl Turner's tweets, he has actually fully supported the whole that trans identified men should have the same rights to enter women's space. He has in the past supported that. I mean, there's an awful lot of people who've changing their tune now, aren't there? Just finally, I want to talk about the Reform candidate in Makerfield. This is Robert F. Kenyon. He was selected. He ran in 24 as well. And oh my goodness, people on social media, the front of the Metro today, it's a lot of the papers today going, absolutely in a tizzy over his social media posts. The fact that he's deleted Facebook account and he got suspended from X at one point. I mean, frankly, guys, he could have simply said that men aren't women, and you'd have been suspended banned for life. So, but some of the things he said, things like he wrote about Asian men assaulting white people en masse, an invasion of foreign criminals. And that was about a specific case. Talked about the Southport. He was specifically talking about the Southport when we had gangs of Asian youths who were not being stopped by the police, who were threatening action. Is it a hate crime for Asian men walking around Birmingham assaulting white people en masse, which was happening. And
yes.
He replied to a tweet from Owen Jones saying, let's be honest, Owen, there was never a threat from the far right because they don't really exist about this massive danger. Numerous tweets when King Charles called for unity in the wake of those riots and understanding after those protests, he responded saying, I think now the King can open up his palaces and grounds for the asylum seekers. I mean, we're told that these are all controversial tweets. I've read them all. I can't find anything controversial in them at all.
If those are controversial, I need to get on and start deleting things.
I was going to say, don't think I can run for public office. Yeah. But genuinely, they're all going to go, but the implication is, well, he's probably a racist bigot. We know what they're trying to do.
Yeah, exactly.
And people will be reading those messages and going, yeah, fair enough. Yeah. What's your point?
I think it's been very clever by Reform. You know, the Green Party last winner of a by-election is a plumber. So they put a plumber up, a local white van man who's a member of the reserve, or was a member of the reserve forces.
I'm sorry,
well.
we do like an ex-military man. And we do know because we know you get stuff done. 10:28 time. Love to hear your thoughts on all the big stories. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Your call's up next. This is Talk.
The Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense, so head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. Let's get straight to your calls. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Lots of you getting in touch about White Van Man and his clash with Rachel Reeves. Loads of criticism of the guy who shouted at her, but I mean, she called him not very British for being rude and badly mannered. But when else do you get a chance to have a go at the woman who's basically making the decisions that are ruining your life and your business? Let's talk about that with Neil in Buckinghamshire. Hello, Neil. What do you want to say?
They seem to forget that people like Angela Rayner in the House of the Commons called the Tories scum.
Yes,
and John McDonnell threatened Esther McVeigh.
Yeah.
Where do they get off by criticising a guy that goes out to work every single day and he's being crucified by this inept government and they're throwing their toys out the pram? Sorry, I think she got everything she deserved.
Yeah. I mean, like she's never heard the F word before. And he didn't. It wasn't like he came up to her either one-on-one, which would have been intimidating for a woman, or that he told her to F off or anything. He didn't. He was talking about getting rid of the government. You're useless. The government's useless. And then quite rightly asking why we're going to be arrested having the England flags. And the thing is, people have been considered to be intimidating. We had the Prime Minister, her boss, only last week, at the weekend, saying that, the United Kingdom rally was a far-right rally. Tens of thousands of completely ordinary people wanting to fly their flag doesn't make them far-right.
Well, champagne socialists
Yeah.
Do as I say, not do as I do.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
that's what they seem to forget this. And it's like Wes Streeting's tweets when he threatened to throw the person, pushes somebody in front of a train.
Yeah.
All these things, they seem to forget. And that's two people that want to stand for the leader of the Labour Party, Angela and Wes Streeting.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. A lot of people don't know this, but so if you're on X, you'll see this regularly comes up, which is that Wes Streeting, for a very mild mannered and actually really very pleasant man, he's a nice guy in real life. Some of the tweets he's written in the past, put it this way, I'd be sacked on the spot if I'd written anything like that ever. I mean, genuinely shocking messages threatening violence to people, and for some reason he's been given a free pass on it.
I think everybody has, since that day in the Commons with Angela Rayner said that, people have lost respect.
Yeah, she wasn't. Yeah, she wasn't in the Commons. It was at Labour, but it was at a meeting of the Labour Party, and she was standing in front of a crowd, and she was representing the Labour Party at the time. Couldn't agree with you more, Neil. Thank you very much indeed. Daniel is in Epsom. Hello, Daniel. What do you make of this?
Do you know, I make the guy absolutely right, because I can tell you, I've had my own business for 13 years, small business, and since they got in effectively, and since they implemented their socialist ways, business has dropped off. Yep. People do seem to have less money in their pockets out there. So unless you're part of the welfare system, or you're a public sector worker with your lanyard, everyone else who actually earns a living like me is worse off.
Yeah.
So you have a right to tell them what you think, because this is probably the worst government in memory. I can't remember a worse government for people like me. I mean, it's just absolutely atrocious. Yeah. And I think they should be. I think they should be shouted at in public by people like me. I'd do it. If he knocked at my door, Starmer, he'd get what for.
And what's so funny is those people criticising this guy would have no issue at all with someone shouting at Nigel Farage. They've got no, I mean, a man who actually faced death threats and doesn't have close protection officers. I mean, so she wasn't walking on her own. If she was in the road on her own, minding her own business in her private life, I would absolutely take issue with this man. She was performing her job in a public place, surrounded by close protection and about 13 or 14 other people. Sorry, no, she's back right. That said, Daniel, are you not aware that you're going to get 10p off your weekly shop as a result to changes to the tariffs for a lot of basic foodstuffs as a result of the Chancellor's announcement today? Your summer of saving. If you've got kids, if they're aged between 5 and 15, they will travel on buses for free in August. I mean, are you not grateful?
Well, this I'm not grateful, because what makes me die is I'm now having to fight. I've had a really successful business for 13 years, and I'll get a 20 grand corporation tax bill, and then I have to pay my VAT back, and then I have to pay personal tax of God knows what else. Right. Meanwhile, I never minded doing that when I was earning, and it was things were going swimmingly. But what they want me to do that whilst at the same time ruining the economy. Yeah. And the only people that are winning in society are the illegal immigrants that we don't want here and have never wanted here. Legal migrants who come here, do a minimum wage job, get a free house, their kids are using the NHS and education system, they're winning. The people that aren't working and on welfare, they're winning. And the lanyard classes, the people that work for the government, they're winning. Everybody else who has to turn a pound note every day is being absolutely kicked up the jacksie. And I've had enough. I can't wait. I cannot wait for the next general election. I'm praying for the day. I just want these. I want them out. I want Labour out.
Daniel, it was just difficult to know which side you're on this debate. Really appreciate that call. Absolutely fantastically just communicated. Thank you so much. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call to have yours say. Rachel Reeves, the phone lines are open to you as well. 10:35 is the time. Up next, going to talk to a former senior Labour Party advisor. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 10:37 is the time. Let's turn our attention now to, these announcements we've hearing from the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, when she's not being shouted at on her garage forecourt. Let's talk to James Robinson. He's a former senior Labour Party advisor. A very good morning to you, James.
Morning, Julia. How are you?
Very well indeed. Thanks for joining us. Just first of all, I suppose, what did you make of Rachel Reeves getting heckled by a white van man yesterday?
Well, it's great. We live in a free country where people can express their views robustly in public and to the people that run the country. I mean, thank God we live in a country like that. That's my main view.
But you think, you think it was fair comment from him?
He's entitled to his opinion. I think that the government's been, in many respects, disappointing. Small businesses have suffered. There's big tax cuts being levied on businesses, more costs being levied on businesses. I thought her response was pretty classy, actually. You know, she didn't shout back and scream back. Well, it's fair enough, isn't it? You can say, oh,
well, it's not very British.
Well, it's screaming and shouting at someone. It's fair enough, but
well, it wasn't screaming. I mean,
yeah, I think it was a good response. I thought she was classy. I mean, it's a classy response. She's proud to be British. She loves her country. That's why she's serving her country. I love my country.
I've got to be honest with you. I didn't feel it. Didn't feel it in my bones, James. I didn't. Well, look, let's talk about what she is also knows. Let's play a little clip, actually. She's gone on TikTok for the first time. What the hell any member of our government is doing on TikTok is absolutely madness to me. But there we are. This is what Rachel Reeves had to say in her very first TikTok yesterday.
Hi, TikTok. I want you to be the first to know that this summer, for kids aged between 5 and 15, there's going to be free bus travel in England. And this is just one of the things that we are doing to help people with the cost of living in these uncertain times.
Right, I'm going to leave aside the music there, James, which is killing me. But this announcement, free bus travel, just for the month of August for 5 to 15-year-olds. Leave your 16-year-old at home. They can't come with you to make life a bit easier. Also, the announcement they're going to be cutting some of the tariffs on essential foodstuffs. Again, why are there tariffs on essential foodstuffs, some of us might ask, which apparently is going to be worth to us the magnificent sum per household of 10 pence off our grocery shops per week over the year. We've also had that freeze on the on fuel duty cut all the way from September all the way to December. Is that really enough to get the economy going and to help people win a cost of living crisis?
Well, I think, first of all, let's just acknowledge the power of the Sun newspaper and the campaign that it's been running. I think pretty much as far as I can remember from my entire adult life, actually, to not have food duty increases. I don't think we've had one since 2010.
And we take it for granted, but it's only taken for granted because they know that the campaign from the Sun will be so huge if they against them if they don't do it.
And good for the Sun, standing up for its readers. Is it enough? Well, every little helps, to coin a phrase. I would rather over time taxes were cut, regulatory burdens on businesses were reduced. I mean, there's a packaging tax going through now, not making front page news. Well, actually did yesterday in the Financial Times, but and the Times, I think. But that packaging tax, a leading retailer said yesterday, would cost him 80 million quid a year. That's not a small amount of money. Get rid of the packaging tax.
But that was part of the negotiation, wasn't it? When the Treasury was talking to the supermarkets about, and much to the supermarkets' horror, about some sort of not compulsory like they're proposing from the end of the SNP in Scotland, but some sort of a voluntary cut to essential goods, their prices, and in return for which they would cut things like the packaging tax and other things. By definition, the government is admitting that it's imposing extra costs on business, which it doesn't need to.
Well, that's inflationary. That's the inflation right there. Yeah. So I have to say they need some more coherence from government on what they're doing and why. No point giving with one hand, taking away with another. Supermarkets have to pass on tax rises in the form of high prices. So, I think the supermarket's got this right.
Well, you don't sound like you're very keen on this government as a former senior Labour Party advisor. You were working for the former deputy leader, Tom Watson. You don't sound very enamoured by this government.
Oh, it's a hell of a lot better than the Tory government, that's for sure. A succession of
that's
useless...
a low bar.
useless Tory governments that borrowed more, that's put up corporation tax from 20 to 25%. So the last caller who's having to pay more corporation tax, blame Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt. That's a socialist policy enacted by a Tory government. So I would prefer Labour to be in charge of that one. Well, what, raising corporation tax?
It's not a socialist
by
policy.
a huge amount.
So, I mean, people confuse, putting tax on isn't socialism. I mean, socialism is something different, but,
Well, higher taxes are usually associated with socialism, and that's what the last Tory government did. So I'm not having any lessons from anyone on how great the last Tory government was.
Although the thing is, everyone says, OK, we don't put corporation tax up, don't put income tax up, don't put national insurance tax up, don't put fuel duty tax up, don't put this up, don't put VAT up. No one wants any taxes to go up, but everyone says, oh, but price is too high. What are you going to do to help me with my energy bills? What are you going to do to help me with my my food costs? What are you going to help me with my housing costs? What are you going to do to help me? Why our public service is not any better? Why aren't you spending more on defence? People want it all ways, don't they? But they don't want their taxes. They just want someone else's taxes over there to go up.
Well, they want the wealthy. Let's tax the wealthy. That won't work either because the wealthy will leave. The only way we can improve the lives of everyone in this country is to grow the economy. That's not a Labour thing or a Tory thing. It's just reality, like the existence of gravity. You have to grow the pie in order to distribute more. Sorry, terrible analogy. You have to have a big more money so you can have good public services and reduce taxes. You have to have growth. That's what I thought this Labour government was going to do. That's what they said they were going to do. They haven't done it. Growth is there. Growth is there. We're not in a recession. We've never been in a recession since this government took charge, and it did have a bad inheritance. I just would like to see some more messaging about Britain being open for business and growing the economy. I think that needs to be the only central mission of this government.
Is there an alternative Labour leader who would do that?
Wes Streeting would do that.
Wes Streeting
would do that.
You just mentioned wealth tax. Wes Streeting's big pitch yesterday was that he would want a wealth tax, which we're told, under the Treasury's own figures, under their own calculations, would cost the economy, I think, is it £7 billion?
Well, it would raise something, wouldn't it? I mean, or else it wouldn't be a tax.
No,
I
they said
overall
it would lose £7 billion because the people who are properly wealthy are remarkably mobile.
They leave. Yeah. No, I take your point.
So it won't raise money. It will lose the Treasury £7 billion. And that's the bloke you think should be in charge of the country. You can't even do maths.
I didn't say you think he should be in charge of the country. I think that he would take I think he'd be a more pro-business leader. And if I could just explain, I think, as you'd expect, Wes Streeting is making his pitch to Labour Party members, because not the government, not the country at large at this stage, because he wants to be in the contest. I don't know if there will even be a contest, because I think everyone wants Andy Burnham in terms of the members of Parliament. Yeah. The support for Andy Burnham is so widespread. I'm not even convinced Wes Streeting will get on the ballot. I'm not even sure there will be a contest, but that's what Wes Streeting is doing now.
Of course, Andy Burnham has to win that by-election first. Currently the polls are suggesting that if Andy Burnham were Prime Minister, he would be able to run, hold a general election immediately, and Labour could actually win that election. I've no doubt about that, because any Prime Minister coming in who's not under scrutiny, who's not being held responsible for anything that's happened in the last few years, it's very easy to be, whiter than white. Do you think that popularity will survive even a year in office?
I doubt it would survive 3 months in office.
That's
I mean, you can't. It is. Of course, it's easy to. Not easy. Nothing's easy. You're sat in Manchester or outside of London making decisions which are consequential for the region you represent and you lead. But when you have to tackle welfare, when you have to tackle immigration, whether that's legal or illegal, obviously you start making unpopular decisions that not everyone likes, and your popularity suffers. So. No, I don't think any Prime Minister... Remember, every Prime Minister we've had, I think the last 6 or 7 Prime Ministers, each of them have been less popular than the one before. I mean, that's because we're in a bind, this country. We're saddled with debt as a result of COVID, the financial crash, all of those things. We paid everyone's wages for 2 years. It was enormously expensive, and we're saddled with debt, and will not change regardless of who's in charge.
James Robinson, really appreciate you joining us, former Senior Labour Party advisor. Thank you for that. Philip Ingram, listening to all of that, your comments?
Well, it's quite clear that the government doesn't have a policy that even someone who has got a Labour background supports.
Yeah.
And the candidates to take over from Keir Starmer don't have a policy to take it forward. And I thought it was quite worrying him saying that there might not even be a leadership contest, because that'll just mean that the chaos that we're suffering at the moment is just going to go on and on.
Yeah,
and
but that means you'd have more chaos perhaps with the leadership contest. If it's going to be a coronation, may as well not bother having it.
Well, yeah.
There's no more of a mandate for a leader because they had a coronation, or when they had the party members vote for them. That's not a requirement in our constitution.
Well, if Labour lives up to what they've said beforehand, because they criticised every time the Tories changed the Prime Minister and said there had to be a general election.
Yeah.
And
by the way, the Tories can't call for it because they didn't think there should have been one. Again, everyone needs to stop being a hypocrite about this stuff. 10:47 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Love to hear your thoughts on everything. 0344 499 1000. Up next, the economics editor of The Spectator, Michael Simmons. This is Talk.
The Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:50 is the time. Well, let's talk more about where we are with the showering of benevolence from Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, when it comes to fuel duty freezes and 10p off our household weekly shop and free bus travel if you've got a 5 to 15-year-old, but just for the month of August. Let's talk to Michael Simmons about this, economics editor at The Spectator. Good morning to you.
Morning.
There's no doubt at all that fuel duty freeze is very, very welcome and very significant for a lot of people, whether they run businesses, whether they use their cars or vans or lorries for their work, or whether they just need them, as 80% of people do in this country, to get to and from work, take their kids to school and the like. That's very welcome. But in terms of the other offerings, this summer of savings, I mean, this is pitiful at best, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, as you say, these are not major interventions, and they're interventions that Labour probably don't want to be quite truthful about. I mean, one of the announcements that we're told she's going to make about cutting import taxes, tariffs on certain food things, that's a Brexit win, right? That's something that we would not have been able to do as part of the European Union. They've announced this trade deal as well that they say is going to be worth just over £3 billion a year to the economy. And these are not bad things. they're all good things, but they're not going to make a massive difference in the long run. It's more sticking plaster economics. What we're not hearing is the kind of supply side reforms, what needs to be done to the, public sector finances to make sure that we don't get into a crisis like this again.
I mean, to a certain extent, say we'll cut some of those tariffs. So she's basically admitting, oh, by the way, we have tariffs on food to make it more expensive for you. There's no VAT on food as a necessity. But we do actually put tariffs, which are a tax, on foodstuffs coming from abroad. And a lot of our food, I mean, about 55% is from the UK, but about 45% is from abroad. So that, we put tax on your food, everybody. But also, we know that a huge amount of the price we pay at the pubs is tax. It's either the fuel duty or the VAT on the price of everything else at the pub, plus the fuel duty. So they gloriously tax the tax that they put on fuel. So again, this sort of wonderful it's kind of noblesse oblige. It's kind of like a sort of a fancy duchess coming down from her big country house to the poor peasants in the village and saying, here you are, have a bit of biscuit, have a little bit of bread. I mean, it really is Marie Antoinette levels, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's a really important point you mentioned about VAT. And I actually think that people have been campaigning for the fuel duty freeze to be extended and missed a bit of a trick here, because people have been talking about this Reeves tax windfall because of increasing oil prices, because of increasing fuel prices. But she wouldn't have actually got that from the fuel duty because of the fact that fuel duty is a fixed amount per litre. I mean, people are not buying more litres of fuel. Yeah. But what she will have got a windfall from, as you say, is the VAT, because that's a percentage of the cost. Yeah. And it's the cost that's gone up. So what people, I think, really should have campaigned on there is actually reducing VAT on fuel, because that's where the Treasury might have been getting a bit of a windfall, although not that they can do anything with it, because at the same time, our borrowing costs have been going up. Yeah. So any extra money they do get will be going straight to, keep the debt servicing costs under control.
And I mean, that's the irony. Any extra money, it's gone out the window straight away, isn't it? But this is the thing. A lot of people get very frustrated, especially when the government says, free school meals, for every kid, not just the kids who really need them, free bus passes, free this, free that. None of it's free. It's subsidised and paid for by the taxpayer. And a lot of people increasingly are feeling, well, hold on a minute. It's like, welfare benefits. Oh, you can get, free entry to, to Madame Tussauds or discount entry. Well, no, it's all subsidised by the people who are paying full price, obviously. And we're in this constant situation where the government's answer to everything is tax us a bit more, take more of our money, and then give some more of it away generously. It's our sodding money they're giving away.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's either someone else's money today, another taxpayer, or even worse, it's the money from our future selves. And we keep making this mistake in Britain that we now seem to have, once in a 100-year crisis about every 2 years. And the trouble is, the people in control at the time think, right, I just need to sort this out now. I just need to make sure that people don't go hungry. So we borrow, we spend, we do these sticking plaster politics. And the trouble is, every time we do that, we walk a little bit closer to the kind of fiscal edge. Yeah. And eventually, I'm afraid to say, we will come up to a crisis where it's a pandemic, an energy crisis, a war, whatever it is, where the government actually cannot help anymore. And we're not being prepared for that or doing anything fundamental on things like energy that would make us maybe a bit more secure and maybe a bit more immune to these
But
shocks.
Also, I can remember, we were congratulating many people were right in saying that they shouldn't, but once we were having lockdown, the furlough, actually paying for people who otherwise would have no income whatsoever, keeping people in jobs, our unemployment rate as after the pandemic was much lower than many had expected because of that. But I remember interviewing him at the time and saying, well, you're Father Christmas now, but you're going to be Scrooge in a couple of years when we have to start paying that money back. And it's almost like the British public went, no, we've got a load of free money. But but they should have been told, but this will cost us for years to come. We're just going to spread that cost out instead of having a certain number of people hit immediately. But again, the finances are in a mess. Labour would have had them in more of a mess because they wanted sooner, longer, deeper lockdowns and more money given to people. So we're in a mess there. Let's also talk about immigration, because you were talking there about, is the government doing anything to grow our economy? Now, we know they're not. I mean, we're not in a recession, as my last guest has said, but, whoopity-doo-dah, thanks very much for that. But when it comes to a lot of our brightest and our best, our most hardworking and ambitious young people, they are upping sticks. We've got these latest migration figures. Being held, Keir Starmer has said, net migration has fallen 82%. Well, from the peak. when it was a peak of 944,000 in the Boris wave in 2023, which caused absolute horror. It's almost halved from what it was in 2024. So for the year of 2025, it's gone down to 171,000. But that's 171,000 net. It's a lot more than that in terms of the gross number of people coming in. Yep. And one of the reasons why it's low is because 246,000 Brits have chosen to leave the country. That is a much bigger number than previous years. It's going up and up and up. And the worry is that the people who are coming in are not the sort of taxpayers and the go-getters and the business starters and the future employers who are the same, the people who are leaving. Well, how concerned are you about that?
Well, I think there's two important points to make here. The first is that, as you say, this does seem to be being driven by emigration, and where there has been kind of drops in visas and immigration, I think really that's because of decisions that were made by the last government and resisted by Labour in opposition. So it's a bit odd to see Shabana Mahmood and the Prime Minister claiming support for it here. I actually think on the emigration point, it is a slightly more complicated picture because, yes, as you point out, there's more than 200,000 Brits have left, and the ONS have revised up that estimate, but they're not actually saying that the number of Brits leaving each year is going up. It's just that they got the number wrong the first time. Yes. So what's actually driving the drop is an increase in non-EU migrants, so the Boris wave migrants leaving. So I actually think, the Brits leaving is a problem, but what's driving this latest release is the non-EU migrants. So we may actually be seeing this phenomenon where certain people that came in the Boris wave, maybe they came as students or maybe they came through temporary work, are leaving. But I think the debate should be, why is that? I don't think it's as a result of this government's policies.
No, exactly. But also there are an awful lot of people who did come in that Boris wave who are still here, the vast majority of whom are actually dependents, not actually working people, and most of those people working are not earning anything close to even average wages. They're certainly not the engineers and doctors and high-skilled people who we were always told were driving our immigration. This is going to be a problem in the future.
Yep. And the government, I think, when we approach the next budget, is going to have a fight on their hands with the Office for Budget Responsibility over this. Because traditionally, the OBR's view has been that migration is just always a good thing. Yeah. It boosts GDP. And that is true if the people coming over are high-skilled, are engineers, whatever. But as you point out, that's not the migration we've seen in the last few years. So because these numbers are going down, the tendency, I think, from the OBR is going to say, right, this is terrible for GDP. Obviously, that's not good for Rachel Reeves. So you might have this bizarre situation where Rachel Reeves, Keir Starmer, or whoever is in number 10 in time for the next budget is having to make a kind of anti-migration argument to the OBR. And I don't think anyone expected that a year ago.
No one expected any of this madness. We couldn't have imaginations like that. Michael Sims, always a good talk to get your analysis, economics editor at The Spectator. We'll get more of what Philip Ingram has to say, a lot more of your thoughts as well. A lot of you getting in touch about Rachel Reeves getting heckled at that petrol station in Leeds. Was the heckler wrong to do it, or was he banged to rights? Love to hear your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good morning. Welcome back to the show. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. It's 3 minutes past 11, and whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your Connect device, thank you so much for joining us. And indeed, if you have missed anything of the show so far, a rip-roaring start, I like to say, to Thursday's show, you can go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show, hit subscribe, never have to miss a thing. Tonight, to say, Philip Ingram, MBE, former senior military intelligence officer, is joining me for the whole show. We get his thoughts on lots of the big stories, but I do want to hear from you in particular. The Chancellor Rachel Reeves telling a white van man who heckled her over the government's failures at a petrol station in Leeds. She told him he was not very British, because apparently being rude is not very British. What's your reaction to that? He was, she was surrounded by people. She wasn't on her own. She was at work. She had close protection officers with her. He wasn't threatening or abusive to her. Yeah, he said the F word once about the government. Frankly, who doesn't? Has she ever been to a football match? How does she cope? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Was it right for him to talk to her and heckle her? Was it right for her to say he was not very British? I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of that. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. You can also text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Got a lot of those messages to get to. And also, of course, calls are charged at the national rate and text cost £1 standard network rate message. We're also going to be talking about those Russian fighter jets repeatedly intercepting a British surveillance plane over the Black Sea, 20 feet away at one point in that flyby. And the latest on the Makerfield by-election, we'll also talk about that. As I say, Philip Ingram is with us for the whole show. Let's go back to Rachel Reeves being heckled. I love this footage. I'm going to, again, if you've missed out... You just
enjoy this. You're going to play it again.
Playing it. I mean, I've got two clips today, and they're both Rachel Reeves.
Rachel.
I mean, could be worse. They could both be Keir Starmer, but there we are.
Or one of each. Oh.
I like my audience too much. I respect them, and I don't want them to turn off as they will.
So you're going to make yourself a Rachel Reeves again?
In fact, what am I thinking? I shouldn't be warning you that I'm playing now. I don't want to give you a chance to switch off. Don't switch off. It's only like 20 seconds, guys. You can cope. And it's not all Rachel Reeves either. But let's have a little watch to listen to those who might not have seen this, of this white van man. Is a petrol forecourt in Leeds. He is there, to be fair, to get petrol, to get diesel or whatever for his van. He's got white flags on his van. Just to place the context, she's not on her own filling up her own car on the way to do the weekly shop or anything. She is there filming as part of her job. She's got two close protection officers with her. There are, I'm told by other people, there are roughly around 15 people around, and most of them men. In no way could this woman have been intimidated or worried for her safety. And he wasn't threatening at all. He was just angry. Question is, did he have a right to be angry and to tell her? That's what I want to know from you. 0344 499 1000. Have a watch and a listen and let me know what you think.
Keir Starmer, we're going to get arrested. We've got English flags on here, Rachel. We're going to get arrested. You're ruining the country. Get Keir Starmer out. Look, England flags. You're useless. Labour Party's useless.
I love our country. And one of the things about our country is good manners. Not very British.
I love our country. Not very British. Philip Ingram, tell us your thoughts.
It's pathetic.
Which side?
Her response, and she's pathetic. She's a public figure. She's the Chancellor of the Exchequer. She's hitting small businesses hard, and she's out doing some filming in a public place. She's not contributing to the local economy by filling up her car or anything else there. And someone going past has got every right to turn around and give her their opinion of what they think. If
you don't like it, either don't go out in public, or in your workplace, or controversially, be a better Chancellor.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't rude. Yes, he used the F word, but then who doesn't today? Get over yourselves. He attacked the government. He didn't attack her personally.
Yeah, he was actually more critical of Keir Starmer.
Exactly.
You're a lot useless. But there is a lot of clutching of pearls. There's two things. The reactions on the left. There's two things. There's oh, this is so rude. Yes. How dare you shouldn't shout at a lady. I really get fed up with this idea that women can't take criticism. Any criticism of a woman is somehow sexist, misogynist. But also, this whole thing, a lot of these people got no issue at all when Nigel Farage is physically assaulted by someone throwing, well, we discover it's a milkshake, but who knows whether you think it is at the time. Someone threw something over me, my first thought was oh my God, is that acid?
Yeah.
You know?
Or they're quite happy to try and justify Angela Rayner calling people scum.
Yeah. And still be Deputy Prime Minister.
And still be Deputy Prime Minister. And this is where...
And in a speech, it wasn't an aside in a fight with someone in a pub. I'm sure she has those as well. It was in a speech that she chose to make.
And this is where, the faux outrage from Labour MPs and from everyone else on the left who are saying it's disgusting, this shouldn't happen and all the rest of it, actually shows the perilous position that the government is in at the minute.
Yeah.
If that's what they're having to jump up and down and try and pretend that there's something disastrous going wrong with the country because of it, then they're in real trouble.
But also these are the men, and again I hate that patronising. Oh, why have I'm not being patronising. We're talking about people who go out to work every day, and if they don't go out to work, they don't get paid. And they go out to work and they do hard work, rather harder than frankly sitting on my backside in a studio.
And having just filled his vehicle up, he's seen his day's profits just disappear because
that would be £100 minimum to fill up that van. And again, you're paying taxes, doing the right thing, and being squeezed and squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. And and it comes a point when people have had enough. And I'm sorry, I think the public have got a right to say it. And again, if she was on her own, walking down the street in a private capacity, then I wouldn't be happy with it.
Yeah.
But leave her alone. If she's in a public place doing her job, he's got every right to have his say. The announcements yesterday, I'm going to do this to you. I'm sorry. I'm going to do... Don't switch off. This is really short.
You said you like the audience?
This is really short, but this is the TikTok that Rachel Reeves. First time she's been on TikTok. Why are you on TikTok? Apparently, the kids tell me, I'm big on TikTok. I don't approve of TikTok. TikTok is owned by the Chinese government, who is a murderous regime that is an enemy state. None of our government ministers should be on TikTok. This is how mad our government is. But this is her on TikTok, and her very first TikTok, telling us about one of the little freebies, the little free giveaways we're going to get, paid for, of course, by our own money. Have a watch and listen to this.
Hi, TikTok. I want you to be the first to know that this summer, for kids aged between 5 and 15, there's going to be free bus travel in England. And this is just one of the things that we are doing to help people with the cost of living in these uncertain times.
I'm just going to carry on with a little bit of a dance. That music. I mean, who put that on? But there you are. That's her on TikTok. I'm not sure it's going to be a big winner. But again, free bus travel for children aged 5 to 15, not your 16-year-olds. Sod them. Leave them at home to just sit on TikTok, I suppose. We're going to see about 150 million apparently going to be spent on cutting some of the tariffs. Well, 150 million that we're not going to have in taxes, cut on tariffs on food imports. Government therefore admitting we deliberately make your food more expensive by putting a tariff is a tax, putting a tax on it. Very anti-tariffs when it comes to Trump. Happy to put them on themselves. That will be, we are reliably informed by economists who know what they're doing, rather more than the failed economist Rachel Reeves. That will make the difference. And this is going to change your little lives, people. You lucky little things. 10 pence cheaper for your entire grocery shop for the week per household. Aren't you lucky? Aren't you lucky? Are you grateful? Are you grateful?
I'm going to Sainsbury's instead of Aldi now.
I mean,
I'm set for 10.
10p doesn't even buy you a renewable plastic bag.
It doesn't. But go back to TikTok. TikTok, owned by ByteDance. The TikTok itself is not a Chinese-owned company, but it's owned by ByteDance, which is a Chinese-owned company. Whenever you get it on your device, it hoovers everything up. So we've got government people now going around with a Chinese-controlled bit of software, an app on their devices with all of the contact details that are out there for all of the other MPs and everything else. It's hoovering all this stuff up. This is just fundamentally wrong.
Yep. Again, another poor judgment. Going back to the economic side of things, though, we've had the government announce this. They're going to extend the freeze on fuel duty. Again, the Sun newspaper campaign. Thank God we do have that every year on this. But it's become politically acceptable, I would say, for any government to actually end that freeze. But it's not been extended forever. But at the end of the day, we are talking about, costs on people's daily lives, on businesses, on people going about doing their daily lives. When we worry about inflation, when we worry about the cost of living, this is all within the hands of the government to cut those costs for people.
So, freezing the fuel duty, a Tory policy. The Tories did it the whole way through, so Labour are just continuing with the Tory policy that's in there. But it's not going to make a difference. What they're deciding to do is not put a tax that the government has got complete control over onto what's going on at the minute. If Rachel Reeves wanted to help people today and wanted to help business today, she would cut the rate of VAT that there is, or VAT that there is on a litre of fuel, because that is what she can control.
Yeah. And she chooses not to.
She chooses not to.
Again, honestly, the majority of when you go and you pay your £100 plus to fill up your car, so it cost me the other day, it was one of those ones that went like £101 to fill up the car. When you go and do that, it was with diesel, and diesel's gone up a lot more than petrol lately. And again, thanks to, insane policies we have on net zero. The more than 50% of that is actually taxes from the government. It's VAT.
Fuel duty is about 20%, and then you've got VAT at 20% on top of that. But the retailers are only making about 3%.
Everyone accuses retailers. Same with the supermarkets. Cost of food has gone up. Oh, they're all price gouging. They're profiteering. They're making 3 or 4% profit.
The government is making more profit out of the huge price rises and the fuel VAT, rises than the people that are drilling.
As our last guest pointed out, it's all going out and paying for the extra borrowing. But there we are. Let's talk about the net migration figures. The government is hailing these. Oh, they are so happy about these. Net migration has fallen 82%, says Keir Starmer. Well, that's from a peak in 2023. Do you remember? I remember being on air when we saw these figures here at Talk, and the absolute horror around the country when we saw the absolutely shocking figure, the peak of our net migration. Bearing in mind, in 2010, we were promised by David Cameron we would have net migration in the tens of thousands, right? It was back of the fag packet type promise. So under 100,000. It then went up 250,000, 250,000, 300,000, 400,000. And then, again, we voted to take back control in 2016. One of the things we were going to take back control of was our ability to control who can come in our country, in particular EU people. Now, barely any people from the EU left because of Brexit. A lot of people left because of lockdowns. They went back to be with their families if they were going to be locked down. Lots come back, lots didn't. We had in that peak, we had people arriving from Ukraine. We also had Hong Kongers who had right to come here. So that did boost some of that. But most of that was actually a load of non-EU arrivals, largely from Pakistan and India and Nigeria. Most of those also dependents, not workers. They were the people, the family members coming with their family member who was working. And most of those people were also not, I say they weren't high earners, most of them weren't even earning average salaries, certainly not net contributors to the economy, even if they were doing work and working a full week's work. But never got it down. But that 944,000 peak, that's where we've got that 82% fall. But it has almost halved in just a year. So from 24 to 25, it's gone down by 48%, and it's gone down to 171,000 net. This is the thing, though. That is still 171,000 more people in the country than not. And you were pointing out earlier, that's the size of some cities.
The size of the city of Oxford, or about the city of the town of Telford. That's in there.
It's a lot of people.
And when you start to break down the people that are going in, those that are leaving the country, those that can afford to leave the country, or been thrown out. There's not that many been thrown out. If you look at some of the other statistics that are buried within that, back in summer 24, if we look at Afghan and other asylum seekers in hotels, there was 129,980. If you look at the figures today, there's 136,136. So that's actually going up. And those are a cost to us as a taxpayer.
Yeah, they ain't working.
We're losing people who are potentially, or who have potentially contributed something to the economy by paying tax here, because they are the ones that can afford to go quickest.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. And they feel like this is the economy that's not going anywhere. They're going home. I know a huge number of people who are Eastern European who are going home now, booming economies in Poland, Romania and places like that, and they go, well, thank you very much.
And they're fed
I've
up
worked
the
here
cost
for
of
20, 25 years. I can't afford to live here. I'm going back home. My cost of living is a fraction of that. But crucially also, we're losing huge number of Brits. 246,000 Brits in these figures have left the country last year. That was a revised figure upwards. But 246,000, who are those people? A lot of them, I know a huge number of people who are either upping sticks to leave or have have already gone. They're people who are often high earners or absolutely plan to be high earners. They're starting businesses. They're able to do work in, in tech, in AI, in businesses where they can be completely mobile. So they come to Britain, they've got meetings and things, but otherwise they're able to work abroad, paying lower taxes, booming their business, being basically living on their wits, living on the amount of work they're willing to do. So working hard and not getting a job because, they're taking a diversity target or whatever. And I'm sorry, we are going to be losing people who are going to be creating the next big businesses that should be the big employers in this country, but they're not going to be here because they're being taxed out of existence.
If you're a Brit moving abroad, because I've done a lot of research on this and know a lot of people that are doing it, you either have to have an awful lot of money or you have to have an awful lot of potential for money because you've got the skill sets that are needed in different countries. And countries tend to need people to invest a huge amount of money in the country.
No,
first of all.
some of them not at all.
And then you get the skill sets that are needed and brought in again. But those are skills that we need in this country. They've got money that we need to invest in this country and all the rest of it. So it's not the people who are living on benefits in this country that are leaving. It's people that are net contributors. That is disastrous for this country.
That is the real worry, isn't it? Let's also talk about, actually, just some breaking news in the last couple of moments. The government has released the first batch of documents relating to the appointment of, as was Prince Andrew, now Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, as a trade envoy back in 2001. You remember, of course, lots of documents in relation to the appointment of Peter Mandelson as our ambassador to the US back in 24. Those documents, we've had some of them, but actually a huge swathe of them. The Security Committee that's seen all the documents says that not only are number 10 Downing Street basically withholding documents, they're trying to redact documents from public view for basically embarrassment reasons rather than national security reasons. The government announced yesterday they are going to delay the publication until probably, well, let's be honest, it's going to be after June the 18th, isn't it? Who are we kidding? Yeah. The general view of people working on the committee who've seen those documents, and some of those involved in the release of those documents are number 10 from sources who have spoken to journalists who I would absolutely trust as having those sort of contacts, is that what is going to be released in the next tranche of documents on the Mandelson appointment would absolutely 100% finish Keir Starmer's career. What he knew when he appointed Peter Mandelson, frankly, already he should have gone based on the lies he's blatantly told Parliament when he pretended he didn't know things which were in the public eye, which we know were on documents he was handed. So that's a big sum. But this is as a result of a request by the Lib Dems earlier this year for the documents related to the appointment of Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor as trade envoy. He, of course, is currently also, like Peter Mandelson, being investigated for some alleged crimes that have arisen as a result of the Epstein files being published in the United States, which have raised a police investigation in the case of Andrew into whether or not he basically handed over basically completely confidential government information to Jeffrey Epstein, which he could have financially benefited. The first revelation I can bring to you from this appointment of Andrew was that actually the late Queen Elizabeth was, according to some of these documents, a memo sent to the then Foreign Secretary Robin Cook in February 2000. The Queen was, quote, very keen for Andrew to take on a prominent role in the promotion of national interests. I mean, there's no doubt, she wanted him to have a job to keep him busy after he'd left the military and keep, let's face it, Randy Andy busy. Yep. Not sure it's going to work out that well, though, Philip. It's
not going to work out well at all. But everyone knew that Andrew was a nasty piece of work, even when he was in the military and he was out. Anyone that's come across him, has detested any interaction that they've had with him.
Rude, entitled.
Yep, completely, and incapable. And therefore, even when he was trade envoy, I know in a number of different countries, because I did some business across the world, and his reputation in those countries was he was a rude, arrogant individual that they put up with him because he was the son of Her Majesty the Queen, and they do that for her. But they showed him no respect whatsoever.
No, absolutely. Let's talk right now about the Makerfield by-election. Andy Burnham has basically, according to the polls, if he was Prime Minister, well, if he went in a race against any of the other candidates, including the current Prime Minister, if he can win this seat, he would be Prime Minister. And according to some other polls, suggest that if he were Prime Minister, Labour could win a general election. The reality is, though, and even a former Labour advisor, James Robinson, we spoke to about an hour ago on the show, has pointed out, the the reality is, if you're not tainted with any decisions of the government, then great, you're not held responsible for them. But the moment he's Prime Minister, he's going to have to make decisions about, and who he appoints as Chancellor and the decisions they make about our taxes and what that white van man in the Leeds garage will be paying, about energy policy, about welfare costs, about defence spending. He's going to face exactly the same problems Andy Burnham that Keir Starmer has. There's no doubt at all he's a better communicator than Keir Starmer. That's a low bar. Do you think it's a communication problem for the Labour Party, though, or is it a Labour Party policy problem?
Well, it's a Labour Party policy problem that can't be communicated. Any benefits from it can't be communicated because
if you tell people what they are, they don't like it.
Well, we've got a Prime Minister who's a poor communicator. We've got a Chancellor who's an appalling communicator. And that poll is down to one simple effect. It's the ABK effect. Anyone but Keir.
Yeah, exactly. But also, just crucially, as soon as someone is in office, they have to make the difficult choices of government. And I think, if it was Nigel Farage, I think he would quickly disillusion quite a lot of reform voters unless he's very honest in advance. And as I've said a million times before, and I'm going to keep banging on about it, voters have got to stop expecting miracles and expecting someone else to pay for the things that they want to have money spent on. I would actually like a government to come in and say, we're going to churn the country around and we're going to go for long-term lower tax but higher growth and everything. In the initial stages, to deal with our country, we are going to have to spend more, building more prisons, more police officers, getting those staff in the hospitals so that get people healthy. We're going to have to spend some money. It's going to cost a bit of money, but we promise you in 5 years' time things are going to be so much better, and then we will cut.
But we must learn how to spend money better. You just look at HS2 and
the NHS. How much more money can you spend on the NHS?
And you compare that to anything that's going on the continent or in Southeast Asia or anything else. We must learn from their businesses and suddenly go, we need to stop all of this garbage that we're paying for and just get stuff done.
Absolutely. In terms of it's culture wars, very much in place yesterday when we've had that emergence of these comments from Andy Burnham from 2022, but certainly comments he's made since would suggest he has not changed his views, basically saying that that it's only supposed feminists, I'm one of those people, and a very tiny minority of women and people generally who think that trans-identified men, he calls them trans women, they're not women, he calls them what they are, men, should be allowed into women's toilets. I had to tell you, mate, actually, that's a pretty majority view. We had a guest on yesterday, a Labour guest, Richard Power Said, who insisted that actually women were much more welcoming of trans people. And I pointed out that if you have a poll say, do you want to be kind to trans people? Yes, of course. I think someone who's that unhappy and mixed up in about their identity, of course I'll feel nothing but sympathy. But when it comes to polling, direct polling about do you want them in your personal changing rooms and toilets, I'm telling you, the polling is very clear. Women are very hard-lined about that, and the answer is a big fat no. There's definitely a majority of women opposed to that. So sorry, Richard, but you were quite wrong on that. We've had, and West Streeting has been, he's been sitting on the fence. He says one thing in one scenario, one thing in another scenario. But Andy Burnham lost the support of the Dragon's Den star Duncan Bannatyne over the trans issue. Bridget Phillipson amazingly has finally announced that trans-identified men will be banned from women's toilets. That has been the law always, confirmed over a year ago by the Supreme Court. And after all this time, she's finally, I'm guessing the lawyers in her department, she's the Equalities Minister, have basically said, it might upset a load of your little Labour fanboys and girls, but at the end of the day, and Stonewall can kick up a fuss, but at the end of the day, the law is the law, and you can't actually insist that people allow the law to be broken. So she's being dragged kicking and screaming to this position, hasn't she?
Oh, very much so. And I find it again duplicitous that we get the likes of Keir Starmer who tries to quote the law for why he has to not properly sanction Russian shadow fleet ships and all the rest of it because Lord Hermer's interpreted a different way. Whereas we get the Supreme Court that couldn't be clearer, and we haven't had Lord Hermer turning around and saying we must implement this now. The double standards that there is in everything that this government does is shockingly bad, and Andy Burnham may well inherit it. Only if he wins the by-election.
Apparently this isn't going to be a big issue on the doorsteps. I think a lot of people completely underestimate how much this is it's a signifier, it's an indicator of sanity, honesty, and just general willingness to be straight about things. Just not play games and culture wars.
Sorry, can you be straight if you talk about trans issues?
I don't think you're allowed. I mean, you know, whatever you say, I just want it all to go away. I just want it all to go. Can we turn back the clock 10 years or 12 years or so? But no, still
25 years.
But still have Brexit. 11:27 is the time. We're going to get to your calls. Love your thoughts on everything we're talking about, particularly, you know, the cost of living. Rachel Reeves getting shouted at and heckled at a Leeds petrol station and saying that the guy back, you know, telling him back that, you know, you're not British, not very British. Do give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. This is Talk.
The Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. Let's get straight to your calls. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. A lot of you want to get in touch. Natasha is in Brighton. Hello, Natasha. What do you want to talk about?
Oh, yeah. Hi, Julia. It's just a general point, really, which sort of encompasses cost of living and people leaving this country. So we're having a lot of work done on a house we've just bought recently. And I've got a group of tradesmen here who are all wonderful, brilliant, multi-talented people. I'm absolutely blown away by the skills that they've got. But you know what?
Can you send them around my way?
I know. Well, these were very difficult to find, but we've managed it. But, you know, just chatting to them, so they're all, you know, probably sort of in their 30s, that sort of age group. And they are just desperate to leave. Yeah. They're just waiting to take their families somewhere different where they're valued.
Yeah.
They don't have to deal with this ridiculous cost of living, where there's a future for their children.
Where are they talking about when they say they want to go?
So this is it, because this is the $1 million question, isn't it? Because we've wanted to leave as well, but it's, you know, so they're looking at places like New Zealand and Australia, possibly not so much Europe, but if it was Europe, it would be sort of countries that were more sort of old Eastern Bloc European countries. Rather than, say, France and Spain now, which I think is they've got massive problems as well, haven't they? But, you know, so that's them looking for a future for their children. I've got two young adult children. One's at university, one's left university. She's married to a South African. They're looking to go.
Yeah.
They just don't see their futures here.
Oh, no, it's absolutely terrifying.
But it is, and it's actually, I wake up every morning and it's so depressing that these people, these socialists, just don't. Why are they working against us, Julia?
Because they literally don't understand how the economy works. This is they really don't understand how you generate wealth, how you run a business, what motivates people. I don't know how it's possible to grow up in this country and not understand this stuff, but they really don't.
But it's not just the cost of living, Julia. It's the fact that I think a lot of people, I mean, my son had to fill out a form recently for a job as a year out of university. And you get the question, what is your sexuality, which has got nothing to do with what you want to do, and what colour are you?
Yeah, what? It's utterly irrelevant. Shouldn't be remotely relevant when you appoint somebody. I mean, literally asking people about these things is sexist and racist.
But as a white male now, I mean, I just think, well, has he actually got a future in his own country?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Natasha, I couldn't agree with you more. But tell all your kids and tell those guys to stay. We're going to improve the country. We're going to do it together. We stick together. Natasha, thank you for that call. But again, I'm hearing this all the time from people. If you want to work hard and get ahead, lots of people feel this isn't the country for them anymore. That is a disaster for us. Robert is in Hertfordshire. Robert, you want to talk about, I suppose, actually a similar subject, really, Wes Streeting. We barely touched on that this morning. He's did his resignation speech yesterday. It didn't get much attention. There was lots more going on. But the former Health Secretary is proposed introducing a wealth tax. This is really, really about appealing to the Labour Party members, isn't it, who love this sort of stuff?
Yeah, it's gone down in my estimate. I quite liked Wes Streeting. I
Me
mean,
too, yeah.
I'm a member of the Reform Party, but you know, what he don't realise is he's saying, like, to be nationalistic, a nationalist, that's a crime. I'm a proud now. It's called patriotism.
Oh yeah, you're right. No, you're right. You're right. He said one of the biggest issues, he says, was facing this country was nationalism. The nationalist parties, Plaid Cymru and the SNP, in power in Wales and Scotland, and of course Sinn Féin in Northern Ireland as well. But also the Reform Party in England doing well. I mean, nationalism is not the biggest threat to this country.
Look, if I was interviewing a potential Prime Minister, you need one thing. You need to be a patriot and not a fifth columnist, like what we've got now. You know, it's as simple as that. You need to love this country. And I can only think of three people who are patriots in the political world. Mm-hmm. And that is Nigel, Ben Habib and Rupert.
I knew the final line there. Do you think Rupert Lowe should stand a candidate in the Makerfield by-election?
Yes, but I think really they're eating each other, the three of them. They need to wipe their mouths, the three of them, their differences, and they need to come together just to get rid of this government.
And should the Tories work together with Reform, whether it's a formal coalition or whether it's just a sort of we'll just quietly not bother campaigning to let you go ahead in this seat and you do it for us in another seat? Should they do that too?
Yeah, I think they should stand. I think they should help Reform by standing aside.
Very interesting.
I'd like to see Kemi join Reform. I mean, it ain't going to happen.
That would be a story, wouldn't it? I can imagine that breaking news. Robert, great call. Thank you very much indeed. Yeah, there was actually quite a lot in that Wes Streeting interview and that resignation speech. Robert quite right to pick up on that nationalism point. So much going on. We're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking about latest defence stories as well. After those Russian jets basically went within 20 miles per hour, 20 miles of our. What am I talking about? 20 feet from 20 feet. I don't know why I've got that from 20 feet from our RAF jets in the Black Sea. And also Kemi Badenoch accusing Keir Starmer of basically buying dirty Russian oil money from which will be used to basically shoot Ukrainian soldiers. That's up next. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. 11:37 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk. Philippine Grimm is still with me. He's a former senior military intelligence officer, and I bet he wants to give his tuppence worth on the stories we're going to talk about right now. We'll get to those after we speak to the special correspondent at the Daily Mail. That is David Petri-Karakos, who joins us to talk about, well, an array of different stories related to defence. Good morning to you, David.
Morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. I mean, first of all, we have extraordinary stories on the front page of some of the newspapers. So is Russian jets coming dangerously close to RAF spy planes over the Black Sea within 20 feet. What are our planes doing and what were those planes doing and how dangerous is going that close?
Well, look, this is something the Russians do a lot. You know, it's something actually the Turks do a lot to Greece. They're testing, they're probing. You know, Putin works on several key principles, I would say, that he's held for most of his political career. One of them is he wants to get rid of NATO. Now, when I say get rid of, I don't mean, you know, it'll be scrapped, but he wants to show it to be a paper tiger. The more he probes, the more NATO doesn't react, the more it looks toothless. And obviously he's helped by a lot of Trump's comments in this area. Now, obviously this is dangerous, right? Not because anyone wants to have a shooting war or a dogfight with planes, but miscalculation, mistake, something goes wrong, a plane crashes, a response is needed, and so on and so forth. But fundamentally, this is something the Russians have been doing for a very long time. Yeah. And look, don't forget what they did in Poland. You know, they were actually, you know, sending hardware over into Poland. They're testing and probing. And it is incumbent
Didn't the Lithuanian Prime Minister had to go and hide in a bunker the last couple of days because of drones being sent by Russia? Here's the thing. They're testing the West. They're testing NATO countries. I think we're probably failing that test.
I think so. I mean, you know, we don't look very resolute at the moment, especially with another thing we're going to talk about, the relaxing of sanctions on, you know, on refined, products linked to Russian crude, as Keir Starmer does everything he can to save his own skin. I mean, he'll dress it up as... It's funny with Starmer, he never showed any gumption at all, except when finally they came for him, and he showed a bit of backbone. But look, this is Russia. Don't forget, Russia fights on many fronts, not just kinetically. People sometimes say to me, do you think Russia will ever go to war with us, Julia? And I say, Russia has been at war with us for 20 years. We just don't realise
I keep telling people we don't want to go to war. We're already at war. What, you know, and with Iran. I mean, you know, and frankly, with China as well. People just need to wake up to this. Well, let's talk about that sanctions issue, because it was a big issue at PMQs yesterday. And Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader, basically said, you know, he was buying dirty Russian oil and basically... Now, the sanctions they announced last October, that we were going to extend the sanctions on Russia. So although you can't buy Russian oil and gas directly into the UK, we have been buying it on a huge scale from India, which we know perfectly well is Russian oil. And it's being, refined there and turned into aviation fuel and diesel and the like. And then we buy it and then we can go, oh, look, but we're not buying Russian products, even though, of course, we know perfectly well that's money going to India and back out to Russia, funding their war effort while we fund the Ukrainian war effort. It's madness and I would say immoral. But she was right to say, like, why is it okay to take oil from Russia but not from Aberdeen, from the North Sea, which we're refusing to have more licences in? But this is going to... Each purchase is a risk to another Ukrainian life and not just soldiers.
Absolutely. I mean, as you say, it is a form of madness because we're almost funding both sides, quite literally. Look, this is not just this government's fault, though. We need to be energy sufficient, okay? We knew this already. We are too reliant on foreign energy. COVID told us about the need to be more self-reliant on supply chains, not rely on China for this, although we now give them a colossal embassy under our capital city, but never mind. Yeah. But this is a big problem, and it goes beyond this government. We need to become energy self-sufficient. Look, there is an energy shock coming to Britain. I guess you can argue that as Prime Minister, Keir Starmer has a responsibility to try to mitigate that. But it is a farcical way to do this, especially, as you say, we have huge reserves off our own shoreline that we are refusing to touch. So this is, madness upon madness. And in the end, the price is in blood.
Absolutely, and it is. Kemi Badenoch mentioned Ukrainian soldiers, but Russia targets Ukrainian civilians as well, men, women and children. Let's also talk finally about Iran. we barely touched on Iran much lately, because all we basically wake up to every morning is, will or won't there be a change to the ceasefire? Won't there be any efforts to reopen the Strait of Hormuz? The latest sort of threats and sabre rattling from Donald Trump, and counter sabre rattling from some Iranian figure in the Iranian parliament. But the latest is that Donald Trump has threatened to hit Iran even harder, and he says, quote, even get a little bit nasty if they do not get a peace deal. Do you think there is any realistic hope of a peace deal that would be sufficient to have both sides walk away with their heads held high enough that they would be willing to walk away?
Well, the one thing when it comes to answering that question is that both are into selling bad deals to their own population and calling it a win, okay? This is really, by the way, I would say one thing. As someone who's been analysing Iranian diplomatic rhetoric for 2 decades, the Iranian work in 3 registers of diplomatic rhetoric. 1 is boasting, 2 is moaning about how ill-treated they've been, and the 3rd is threatening hellfire. We now have an American president who works in entirely the same registers. So actually, it makes the whole thing much more confusing. But look, there will be a deal, Julia, and I say this for one reason. Everybody needs it. The Iranians can say what they like. They need a deal, okay? They're suffering from the Straits of Hormuz. Don't forget, they've been hammered. The Americans need a deal, and the world needs a deal. China, which is backing Iran, needs the Straits open. So we'll get there one way or another, but it will just be deeply painful.
And we are going to feel the hit later this autumn, because we haven't really felt the Iran conflict economic fallout yet. David, always so good to talk to you. David Patrikarakos, special correspondent at the Daily Mail. Thank you for that. Philip Ingram, listening to all of that. Right, this is your absolute area, among your many areas of expertise. Let's start with Iran now. Do you agree? Do you think there will be a deal? Because everyone really wants one.
I think primarily Donald Trump wants one. Iran thinks they're winning at the minute, and Iran actually has... Well, yes, Iran...
Well, they say they think they are.
They haven't won the military tactical battle, because America can flatten them tomorrow. But the more that they push America from carrying out further military action, the more they keep America waiting, the more they hold the world to ransom, Iran suddenly realises it's got power, and therefore it's accelerating its influence. Israel has destroyed a lot of its influence around the rest of the Middle East with taking out Hezbollah and Hamas, and the Saudis are doing a good job against the Houthis and everything else. But this means that the problems around the world are still going to continue, and that's the danger of it all. But Donald Trump wants and needs a solution.
Russia is thrilled because this is all happening. It's boosting our oil prices for Russia. They're getting more money in, and all of our resources, and everyone's focus is on what's going on there. I mean, this is the same as America dragging out the Ukraine war, because Russia is using up its resources. There are a lot of proxy wars going on.
Well, it's Russia and China are pleased as well, because American and Western military resources are the stockpiles are being depleted enormously. It's impacting our economies. It's impacting China's economy. Russia is largely isolated.
But it is fascinating how much these the issue, our relationships with our economic dealings and the threats from Russia, Iran and China.
They're all linked.
They're incredibly linked. Talk us through that.
Oh, they're hugely linked. We've got the CRINC countries. So China, Russia, Iran and North Korea, all coming together, and we see them operating, in each other's theatres. Russia imported the Shahed 136 drones that are being used to good effect by the Russians attacking the Ukrainians. The Russians improved the technology, exported it back to the Iranians again. We saw that in technology of the drone that hit the British base at RAF Akrotiri in Cyprus. The Chinese have been supplying components, into the different operations. North Koreans have been supplying the troops in there. North Korea provides a lot of weapons and ammunition, not just to Russia, but also into Iran. It's all working together. And if you look at it, these are all countries that are run by effectively dictatorships. They think in multi-generational terms, and they're fighting against democracies who think in prime ministerial or parliamentary or presidential terms, or more accurately, in what tomorrow morning's tweet's going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, also, just your thoughts on this. We've had another one of those ridiculous pretend aid flotillas from the pro-Palestinian bunch, just play acting with their kafirs, and a bunch of them got arrested, taken at gunpoint and handcuffed and not treated very nicely, because they were taken away in international waters trying to get to Gaza. They didn't have any aid, by the way. They literally had 2 little boxes or plastic bottles of. I mean, absolute nonsense. This is all just a pretense, and they basically want the Israelis to arrest them, because then they get all the footage, and everyone goes, oh, isn't it awful? Now, not helpful that one of the Israeli ministers, far right, I mean, he's properly on the right, as the Itamar Ben-Gvir, he put out a very inflammatory video, basically him taunting them, holding the Israeli flag. Now, I kind of understand his sentiment dealing with these Egypts, but it was wrong. I think once someone is in detention, I think, again, democratic nation states need to act better than that. He's been condemned, by the way, from another minister in the Israeli government. The Israeli government have actually criticised it themselves, but he's not a popular figure. I mean, he's in the government because it's the only way that Netanyahu can stay in government, and has often said things which are absolutely not Israeli government policy. And I think he was wrong what he was doing. I've seen people, including the likes of Von Ridley, my ex-friend, comparing the arrival of these people to something arriving at Belsen concentration camp. I mean, that level of absurdity, and it's a disgrace. But the Foreign Office has summoned Israel's most senior diplomat in the UK over this video posted by the Security Minister Ben-Gvir, taunting detainees from the aid flotilla. But I mean, really?
Well, yes, no. Ben-Gvir needs to be held to account. What he did was completely unacceptable in any standard whatsoever, and actually that puts him in the same bracket as some of the appalling things that have happened to Jews historically, because he's taunting people who are.
He's actually not helped the Israeli courts.
Oh no, not at all. Yeah. But right and proper that those individuals have been detained
absolutely.
because
they knew they would be. They want to.
The queries for Palestine boats whenever they landed in Gaza would not have lasted very long.
I have to say, I'd let them land. Fly free, my pretties. Go and live in Gaza. Have a great time. 11:48 time. We can take a quick break. Then we are going to be talking about those latest migration figures with someone who actually understands them and the real significance of them. Former head of UK Border Force, Tony Smith. Also, what we've not got to yet is those asylum seekers. Where are they all living now? Oh, we've got some information on that too. This is Talk.
Not wig.
It's a nutty canister, either way. I mean, look at the nut on it.
Bob Odenkirk! Saul was great. He was just a breath of fresh air. Amelia Clark! Star Wars versus Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones, definitely. I'm loyal.
Don't tell me. Alex Hassel!
In season 2, a lot of us get our clothes off.
You do know you did that in season 1.
Exactly, that's true, yes.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:50 is the time. Let's get straight to our next guest, former head of UK Border Force, regular, of course, on the show, Tony Smith. Very good morning to you, Tony.
Morning, Julia.
Thank you very much for joining us. Lots to talk about in these latest migration figures that came out at 9:30 this morning. I mean, the Home Secretary Shbana Mahmood and the Prime Minister Keir Starmer are hailing this massive big fall in the number of asylum seekers not asylum seekers, sorry, I want to start with net migration to this country, saying it's an 82% drop, and it's a 48 on the peak and a 48% drop on the previous year, down to 171,000 net arrivals to the country. Now, there's no doubt at all that's a lot better than the 950,000 roughly that we had back in 23 under the Boris wave, and Ukrainians arriving, Hong Kongers and the like. But at the end of the day, these are still historically sky-high figures, and a lot of this hides the fact that a lot of these people are coming from outside the EU, and also the fact that the net figures are completely skewed by the huge number, almost 250,000 Brits who are choosing to leave the country. What do you make of those figures?
It's always quite hard, Julia, when you get these numbers, because you'll get the headline figures, as you say, but, it's quite... I've been looking at them for the last couple of hours, trying to drill down exactly what's going on here. I mean, I think overall you have to give credit to Shabana Mahmood and the Home Office for getting it down to the number it is.
Well, did she get it down, or is most of this down to the changes Rishi Sunak
Well, I think this government have preserved some of the changes that James Cleverly put into place before the Conservatives left, in terms of the number of healthcare, low-skilled visas, raising the skill level threshold for higher worker visas, cutting off family reunification for some. I think all of those things, taken together, have led to a very significant drop, actually, in overall figures, in overall net migration figures. But as you say, when you drill down into those, there are things worth looking at. Most of our immigration now does not come from the EU. It comes from outside of the EU still. Very large numbers from the Indian subcontinent, in particular India and Pakistan, are coming in. I'm still a bit concerned about the asylum intake figure, Julia. I've been trying to get to the bottom of that, but that still says to be running very, very high. It says 88,000 Jan to December 25 here. That's still far too high. We got it.
Well, hold on a minute. That's 88,000 new asylum seekers. Now, that's way more than the number we're getting on the boat. So are these people who are coming in on lorries, or is a lot of this people who have come here on a tourist visa, a student visa, a work visa, and then suddenly, miraculously, at the end of that visa have gone, oh, it turns out it's unsafe for me to go home and I'd like to claim asylum now?
Yeah, these are people that have got a visa to come here for one reason or another, study or work, and then when they get here, they claim asylum. That's not the way the visa system's supposed to work. You're supposed to risk assess visa applicants around the world. We had immigration officers doing that back in my day, but now it's done pretty well electronically, I think, on a risk assessment framework. But nonetheless, it's far too high, Julia. People should not be getting visas to come and work and study here and then claiming asylum when they get here, unless there's been a significant change back home, which there hasn't been in India and Pakistan. So I think I would be looking very, very closely at that figure if I was the Home Secretary, and I'm wanting to know why UKVI are issuing visas to people that shouldn't really be getting them in the first place. So there are problems, I think, still with illegal and irregular migration. They haven't got that down to the numbers they would like. And I'm also a bit concerned about the asylum removals figure, Julia. The removals, they will continue to say, rightly, that the overall removals are up, 67,000. That does, though, include a lot of people that have made voluntary departures, people that aren't in the asylum system. But the big issue, I think, for most people is stopping the boats. Now, they are down this year. Some work has been done on that. But we talk frequently about a removals deterrent, and I think that's only about 3% of people who come by boat ever end up getting removed.
Yeah.
I think that's a big challenge, is how do you cut off that supply chain and actually, reduce that boat intake?
And I think you and I will talk about that until the end of time. But it's very interesting also about what happens to asylum seekers while they are here as well. And again, these figures have come out. That's net migration again, and all those figures. Those are the figures. People arriving legally. We need to make that clear. These are asylum seekers. A lot of these people say already arrived legally, then trying to stay on. I would say most of those in these cases illegally. But I'm old-fashioned like that. But it's very interesting in terms of what happens to them. The number of asylum seekers being housed temporarily in UK hotels is down to just over 20,000, down from a year-on-year high from 32,000 the year before. Now, it had at one point in 2023. 2023 was bad for so many things. It was as high as 56,000 at that point. However, what seems to be very clear is that they're not leaving. They're not taken off the rolls. They're staying, but they're being dispersed out of hotels into local areas. But crucially also, they're being moved from cities and towns, it would appear, to rural areas, to the suburbs, to basically not be quite so visible. And I've always thought this is an issue. When we said get rid of the hotels, well, what we meant was get rid of the people from the hotels and get them either into prison camps or whatever, detention camps where they can't leave, and then to get them out of the country. What I didn't mean was put them in a bedsit next door to me.
Yeah, so the grant rate is down to about 40% actually. So they are looking to refuse more asylum applications, but the appeals backlog is still over a year, Julia. So a lot of these people who are in the asylum system will stay in it for some time, and they have to go somewhere. So as you say, they're not being removed from the country; they're being decanted out of hotels into other accommodation, like these barracks or like houses of multiple occupancy. But it doesn't actually get to the root of the problem. I think what people really want to see is people coming by a small boat are not here for an indeterminate period, but there will be a specified period where their cases will be rejected and they will be removed.
I'm going to go 2 weeks max.
Yeah, well, that brings me back to the asylum removals figure. Under the Blair government, believe it or not, we did have a failed asylum seeker removal target. I had one of those myself, and I was charged with removing X number from the country of failed asylum seekers, which means getting them through the process, getting them documented, getting them removed, and that was actually delegated down under the UK Border Agency to officials. Right now, they kind of lost the plot of that a bit, I think, because there is no target for failed asylum seeker removal targets. But I think if they bring those back and we start focusing on how can we stop these boats by getting more people detained and removed, then that would be the the icing on the cake. But let's give credit, Julia. I think they've done a good job in getting these figures down. I mean, we do spend a lot of time criticising the government. To be fair to them, 170k when it was 350 when we had Brexit, and that was Bulgarians, Romanians. We were all beating our heads against the wall. We got to stop this. 170k is half now what it was in 2016. This net figure.
Yeah, but after we had, but this is a crucial thing. I mean, we shouldn't be. Oh, we're so grateful. It's still way above the tens of thousands that every single government said they would deliver from 2010 onwards. But also, crucially, these stats are absolutely astonishing. This new data out this morning from the ONS also includes the fact that almost a fifth of the UK population right now is foreign-born. Almost a fifth. Now, we are not, this whole nonsense we hear, we're a nation of immigrants. No, we're not. I mean, we're not. We're just not. We've got historically, for about 1,000 years, one of the lowest rates of immigration in pretty much any country. I mean, just follow. We have more people coming in about 10 years than we had for about 1,000 years, I think was a stat that you gave us recently. The British public, again, they'll be living next door to people, working with people who are from abroad, and you can be absolutely happy with those people, and they're contributing to the economy. But the British public were never asked about this. We never gave permission for this.
No, you're right, and that is the issue. There's a big demographic change, I think, that's happened since before the Boris.
And particularly people coming from cultures that are very different from ours.
And it takes time to integrate people. I studied integration in Canada when I was attached to Immigration Canada a few years, but it does take time to integrate people. So they take up your language, they take up, your community, they become community. It does work in the end, it takes some time. But when you get large scale figures like this who stick with their own cultures, it will cause community division. So I think we do need to look at that. How do we integrate the people that are going to be staying here, as well as reducing the intake? And of course, as you said, Julia, earlier on, how do you stop British people from wanting to leave the country, not happy living in here anymore? I think that's very sad that people are leaving.
Yeah, I think it's more than sad. I think it's really, really worrying. Those of us who've got bright, hard-working late teens who want to make a life for themselves, getting very worried that they're going to see their future elsewhere. We need those people to stay, not just for their mum's benefit. Thank you so much for joining us. Former head of the UK Border Force, Tony Smith. Thank you for that. Darren Graham's up next. More from Philip Ingram too. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. It's 2 minutes past midday. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. So much to talk about today. Of course, this is a station you can listen to on DAB Plus Radio or on your smart speaker, watch on YouTube or your connected device, whichever way you're doing it. Great to have your company. You have missed, if you've just tuned in, rip-roaring show, if I say so myself, mostly my guests and your fantastic calls rather than me. But if you do miss any of it, go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show, hit subscribe, and never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking more about those latest migration figures and asylum figures. We're also going to discuss Keir Starmer announcing that the 5p cut on fuel duty will be extended to the end of the year. Chancellor Rachel Reeves getting basically heckled at a Leeds petrol station and then saying to the guy that he didn't have good manners, that he wasn't very British. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Plus, Bridget Phillipson finally catching up with the law, which has always been the law, but was clarified by the Supreme Court April last year, basically banning men from women's toilets, changing facilities and sports teams. The new official guidance is going to state, well, the facts that were all known by everybody until 10 minutes ago. Plus, the regulator Ofcom has criticised TikTok and YouTube, saying in a new report their content feeds are simply not safe enough for children, despite them promising to make things safer. In a couple of moments, going to be talking to Darren Grimes, Reform UK councillor and deputy leader of Durham County Council. First up, though, Philip Ingram is here still. He's a former senior military intelligence officer. We've been putting a question to everyone today about that white van man who heckled Rachel Reeves over the government failures at a petrol station in Leeds. She shouted that he was not very British. Getting your reaction to that, and indeed the sort of pitiful efforts to help us with the cost of living, 10p off your weekly household shop. I mean, for goodness sake, it's embarrassing. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can message us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged the national rate. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. Philip, you and I have talked a lot about that, but these migration figures, just been talking with Tony Smith. I mean, there's a man in this country who knows what he's talking about. The former head of UK Border Force is it. The numbers that come in with these, when we get these migration figures, I mean, it's just a raft of information about who's coming here, who's leaving, asylum seekers, where they're living, who's being processed. There's a lot to take in. Crucially, we've got the net migration falling. Yeah, and it is a big fall to 171,000 net. But it may be an almost 50% cut on the previous year, and as Prime Minister and the Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, pointing out, it's an 82% cut on the absolute crazy high of 944,000 in 2023. However, the net figures hide other things. They hide the fact that actually it's hundreds of thousands of people arriving and almost 250,000 people who are British leaving, and also other EU citizens leaving. And a lot of the people who are arriving are not from the EU, not from Europe, from often very different, let's be honest, very different cultures from our country. And we've seen that play out in this country. They're going to be hailing this as a great success. I don't think the British people are going to think this is enough.
No, let me put some of the numbers that I've found online about this. Non-EU arrivals in the country, 349,000 individuals. Those that left the country, so you net migration is those that have left, take away from those that have arrived, and you get your migration figure. 136,000 Brits, 42,000 EU passport holders. So we're trading Brits and Europeans for non-Europeans coming in from everywhere else.
Largely the Indian subcontinent. It's India and Pakistan, but also Nigeria. Big countries.
Africa as well. And
how's that working out for everybody, I'd like to say?
Well, you're a
bigot if you discuss it. It's like, no, talking about culture. Talking about culture, talking about attitudes, talking about criminality levels, talking about ability to assimilate and their contribution, particularly Pakistan. Pakistan, Bangladesh is another country as well. Pakistan, very high rate of unemployment among Pakistani immigrants. Why are we importing people with a high rate of unemployment?
And it takes an awful lot longer for people who come from such different cultures to try and integrate within the community.
If they try at all.
If they try at all. And the trouble is what we're finding around our towns and cities. You know, I live in Birmingham, and that is supposedly the most cultural diverse city in the country. But
it's not diverse.
It's not diverse. People are living in their own little ghettos. And that's the trouble. And you get these ghettos. And I drove back the other night from a hospital where unfortunately I had to take my father-in-law to A&E and back to where I was living through some of these ghettos. And oh my goodness, I felt safer in Basra in Iraq.
But that, I mean, that's telling something. I mean, also crucially, we've got the asylum figures, and we've got, and asylum seeking numbers down, the boat numbers, well,
the numbers are coming down overall. That's good.
But again, the people all the people who've arrived are still here, and they're living in they moved out of hotels, but they're basically living in a bedsit at the end of the road. But also crucially, this figure, just finally, almost a fifth of the UK population is now foreign-born, 18.9%. So 19% of the UK population, according to these latest estimates, these are from 24. There's, we haven't to put crunch on these figures, but 1 in 5 of the British population is now born abroad. Now, that is a huge change. I do not remember that being in any government's manifesto.
No. I've never seen that in a government's manifesto. And the trouble is, if that change was people that are coming in from similar cultures and everything else, then we wouldn't notice changes in society. But it's not. It's people coming in with completely different cultures, completely different values and everything else. And therefore, it is changing the overall culture of the country, and not in a good way.
And anyone who's saying that's not happening, or denying it, or saying it's a bad thing, simply hasn't been paying attention. I know someone who has absolutely been paying attention, and that's my next guest, Darren Grimes. He's a deputy leader of Durham County Council, Reform UK councillor, and joins us now. Always fabulous to have you on the show, Darren. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Julia.
There's so much I want to talk to you about, but let's start, because I know you'll have been crunching the numbers today as well. We've gone through those migration figures. Let's start with the legal migration, because, I remember the heady days when David Cameron went to get elected in 2010, saying you would get net migration down to the tens of thousands. From that point on, it went up and up and up and up. Boris wave was, outrageous what happened under Boris Johnson with that 944,000. Bearing in mind, that was net. It was about 1.2, 1.3 million new arrivals, largely from outside the EU. We're paying for the cost of that right now, pressure on housing, benefits and goodness knows what, and our schools and our hospitals. What do you make of the latest figures, and in particular the fact that a fifth of our population is now born abroad?
Yeah, well, I think it's a complete and utter betrayal, Julia. Ultimately, nobody ever gave their democratic consent for this to happen, this fundamental transformation of our country. In every single election since I was born in 93, governments have promised that they would actually tackle and reduce migration to this country. Yep. If anything, since 97, it's just ballooned beyond all recognition, unprecedented numbers. And as I say, it comes back to that fundamental point. Literally nobody consented, nobody voted for this, yet they're getting it all the same. It's been a sort of enforced diet, a coerced diet of this multicultural diversity ideology, where actually the fruits of the pudding being in the eaten aren't evident, because actually GDP hasn't grown in the large numbers that are promised alongside
if mass migration delivered this amazing boom, we would be laughing now, wouldn't we?
Exactly. You've just mentioned it, Julia. You've just said it earlier. The most people coming from that particular part of the world, Pakistan, etc., they're out of work. We are literally paying for them to be here. That is insane, surely.
I find it absolutely staggering. And yet, it's really fascinating that only yesterday we had Rachel Reeves being heckled in a Leeds petrol station forecourt. I've got no issue with her being shouted at for being rubbish at her job. He wasn't threatening. She had plenty of people, including our close protection officers. She was at work. She chose to be in a public place. You take the hit. If you don't want to be shouted at, be a better chancellor, I would say. But isn't it interesting that he was saying about, you're ruining the country. He goes, look, England flags. Are you going to get me arrested? Because people are so concerned. Because people have literally, been accused of being bigoted and far right because they want to fly the Union Jack or the England flag. But her response was, I love our country, and one of the things about our country is good manners. Not accused him of being not very British. So, isn't it amazing we found a Labour politician that can actually recognise a peculiarly British trait, which is our good manners? But the problem we've had, particularly on the left, and frankly a lot in the Tories as well, who are better off in the Lib Dems, is this idea that all cultures are equal, that we must adapt to the people arriving in our country, all these different people speaking different languages and having different views and different values, and this is good for us because diversity is our strength. Again, there's no evidence for this, is there?
No, there isn't, Julia. And ultimately, I know exactly what you're saying, because we've just had to look at a contract, for example, for translation for our council. Oh. Now, I would rather not do that, but it's protected under the Equality Act. You know, that thing that they keep telling us is so absolutely amazingly brilliant? Well, actually, no. All it means is that we have to be utterly acquiescent for every other culture, but apparently our own.
How much is Durham County Council having to pay for translation
you're
services?
Talking tens of thousands. High tens of thousands. It is.
Which could pay to fill potholes, social care for our elderly. But
exactly.
I'm sorry, if I went to another country, I simply would not. Well, if I'm going to live there, I would learn the language, ideally, before I went. And if I was a visitor, I would expect to pay for it myself, or I'd bring a friend.
And you multiply that by every single local authority in the country having to do exactly the same thing. And the cost is in the millions. It's an absurdity. We have to be acquiescent to every culture but our own. We get told, I actually got told, Julia, that the flying of flags that many of our residents up here did, as in putting them on the lampposts in the Raise the Colour campaign, that actually it was a homophobic act. And I thought, my God, Julia, I've been called many things, but that one is probably the most preposterous I've heard yet.
I mean, you can't win.
Homophobic? How is it homophobic? It's an absurdity.
But also the idea, if you're intimidated by someone flying the national flag of the country you live in, you're probably living in the wrong country.
Yeah, well, quite. And Rachel Reeves, turning around to that fella and telling him, the man in his van, that actually that's not very British. Well, I think she'll find that if she speaks to the majority of the British people, they would all tell her absolutely the same thing. More people believe that view than Labour would ever care to admit.
And a lot of Labour voters. That's the interesting thing, isn't it? Now, what do you make of there's been quite a lot of pearl clutching about this. There are two lines you get from the left. One on this is that, it's outrageous how rude this man was. He shouldn't have shouted at her, and calling it sexist. If you want to have the first woman chancellor, the first woman chancellor is going to get shouted at like the male chancellors, but also basically saying, what a great riposte she gave. I love our country. I mean, I didn't think it was a great riposte, but what do you make about the claims that, the man was in the wrong to have tackled her?
Well, ultimately, I think this comes back to the idea that actually nationalism is the new charge, right? Nationalism is what they call us. They call us nationalists. Yeah. And it's just another racist, that's what they use. Yeah. They've decided that actually that doesn't make them very electorally popular, so now they're using nationalists. Ultimately, Julia, the way I think of this, the political class in this country are always of the view that public anger is actually uncouth or dangerous. But if you look at the position people are in, people are skint. We've got businesses struggling across the piece. Employers are cutting back. Families feel poorer than ever before. And Rachel Reeves is talking like she's delivering some kind of economic masterstroke while the country feels like we're running on fumes. She stood by a petrol station. Maybe we all need to get high on those fumes, because right now we feel pretty low indeed.
And that's the thing. People really are very, very angry, and understandably so. I just want to try to find some notes just on the criticisms of your candidate, the Reform candidate, in the Makerfield by-election. This is where an awful lot of political attention is right now, because we've got this bizarre situation where we've got Andy Burnham as the Labour candidate, the former government minister, of course, now Mayor of Manchester, Greater Manchester, now running as his candidate. And basically the argument is vote Labour, get rid of the Labour Prime Minister. Everyone knows he's going to stand, he's going to get the support from MPs, may not even be a proper leadership election, may just be a coronation, and Keir Starmer is out. If, by the way, if we ever do see these documents on the appointment of Mandelson, that comes out first. Been some criticism of your candidate, and this is Robert Kenyon, over deleted messages, Facebook account that's been deleted. Apparently, outrageously. His X account, his Twitter account, was at some point taken down. I'm trying to think of anyone I know that hasn't happened to.
Yeah.
But it is extraordinary. I've got to say, again, this is not party political. I just judge things as I see them. Their claims, it's a front page of the Metro today about these controversial comments that your candidate has made in the past, in which he's talked about, we were asking, in response to some of the Southport Home Office tweets about people who engage in violent protests will face the full force of the law. Apparently it's very controversial. He wrote, is it a hate crime for Asian men walking around in Birmingham assaulting white people en masse, which was a reference to a counter-protest at the time. He used to reply to Owen Jones, who'd called the rioters a massive danger. He wrote, let me be honest, Owen, there was never a threat from the far right because they don't really exist. He also responded to Westminster's police superintendent over how they policed their counter-protest, saying there was two-tier policing against the native population. And when the King called for unity, he said, I think now the King can open his palaces and grounds for the asylum seekers. I've got to be honest with you, I'm struggling to find a message that would even raise an eyebrow in any pub or workplace in the country.
Well, you're exactly right, Julian. It goes back to that Rachel Reeves point, as well as being the most of the media as well. They're just totally out of touch with the political mood and sentiment right now. People just feel utterly powerless and dejected. And I think calling out two-tier policing, which is evident. You covered it all after the Unite the Kingdom protest, the way in which actually there was facial recognition cameras allegedly, on one side of the political fence and not the other. And ultimately, I think everyone looking at things that have happened over the last few years are crying out saying that political two-tier policing is obvious. Without fear or favour has totally gone out the window, and ultimately everything that has been expressed by Robert Kenyon there, I think most people would accept as being a perfectly valid opinion to hold. But Julia, a good friend of ours told me once, Toby Young, Lord Young I should say these days.
Well, he likes the peerage, he likes the title.
Well, he deletes his own tweets. He runs the Free Speech Union, for goodness sake. Yeah. This is the climate we're living in.
He's got in trouble for tweets, hasn't he? I mean, again, over commenting on women and their large breasts. I mean, he's a bloke. I wasn't surprised.
Just get a grip.
Well, I think that's what he was trying to do. But anyway, just while you're talking, I'll get in trouble for that. I don't care. Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, is in live in the House of Commons. Because I like our audience, we've already played 2 clips of her today. I think that's enough for everybody for the day. But she's announcing her plan to tackle the cost of living. We're told they dropped this idea for some sort of voluntary, sort of basically cutting of the prices on essential goods in the supermarket, although the SNP want to do it as a compulsory thing in the supermarkets in Scotland. But we're looking at free bus travel for kids aged 5 to 15 just for the month of August, and they're going to cut some of the tariffs, 150 million quid being lost to the Treasury from cutting tariffs on foodstuffs coming in from abroad. So they're already admitting they're taxing off food, which we don't have VAT on, but that's going to save us all. And don't get too excited while we're on air, because I don't want to get you too excited about this, but we're looking at an extra we're having 10 pence off our household weekly shop as a result of that. How excited are you about that, Darren?
Oh, over the moon. I mean, Julia, why do we even tax chocolate anyway, right? We can't actually grow it in this country. So why are we doing that? Why are we doing this? Ultimately, I think actually this is a government that's totally out of ideas, right? They're flapping about, trying to do, they were even called for price controls. I mean, hello, did I wake up in Venezuela? That's already been tried and it wasn't very successful. They ran out of basic medicines and electricity. I just ultimately think that all of this suggests that this is a government that's totally floundering. They are doing something in the wind, if you catch my drift. And I just totally think that the public are going to look at this and think, my God help them. They U-turned more. I was told a really important life lesson, which was you turn too many times and you very quickly end up in the political U-bend. Well, they're so far down the U-bend, and the nation, Julia, is crying out for someone to flush the damn chain.
Darren Grimes, Reform UK Councillor, Deputy Leader of Durham County Council. Thank you. Always great fun having you on air. Philip Ingram, your reaction to what you had to say?
Oh, that's one of the best descriptions of the government, round the U-bend, and we're just waiting for people to first. That's the best description I've heard. Absolutely. He's 100% right. Darren's hit the nail on the head as ever.
Again, I don't think any of this is party political. No, I think this is what a lot of Labour voters have thought. Yeah. I think it's from lots of different parties going, this isn't good enough. And Rachel is on her feet, basically announced this plan. You're tackling the cost of living, and literally, it's like it's not tackling the cost of living. We've got our taxes are too high, our energy bills are too high, and these are government choices.
It's members of the Labour Party, it's members of the government that want Keir Starmer to go. And therefore, it's them that don't believe that the government.
But extraordinarily, there seems to be this view that they have to keep Rachel Reeves as the Chancellor. She's got a little bit of spring in her step at the moment because the alternatives, like Ed Miliband, are so awful that the markets would absolutely freak out. So they're going to say we're going to reassure everybody by keeping Rachel Reeves, who is one of the worst chancellors we've ever had.
Yeah, well, that's the trouble with another potential Prime Minister, another potential Chancellor, and the quality that there is with the 400 plus MPs that there are in Parliament is such that they have to try and get someone else in as an MP.
Absolutely. We're going to take a quick break, we're going to take your calls, but I just want to bring in a story that we didn't get to, as got handed this about 20 minutes ago, because there's just so much to talk about today. But an NHS trust, Nottingham University Hospital's NHS trust, has sacked 11 members of staff who allegedly inappropriately accessed medical records of the Nottingham attacks victims. There's, of course, those students Barnaby Webber and Grace O'Malley Coomer, and the grandfather, Ian Coates, stabbed to death by Valdo Callicane, and we've had that ongoing inquiry, and that was back in June 2023. But it emerged last year in 25 that staff had accessed the victims' records without need, basically, for their own interest for some reason, whether I don't know whether they were planning to try and sell stories, I don't know. But we're not talking about one wrong 'un. 11 members of staff have been dismissed. 12 had final written warnings and 2 had first written warnings. And the trust informed the police and the Information Commissioner. On what planet? The staff involved included not just admin and clerical colleagues, but registered medical professionals, including nurses and doctors, going into the private medical records of 2 dead students and a grandfather for no medical need whatsoever. But don't forget to clap for the NHS, everybody. What the hell is going on?
Across the country, people need to be educated in handling your personal information.
They know that. You are not allowed to go into people's medical records unless you are treating them, you've got permission.
They do know that, but one you could put down as
one wrong.
But 11 shows a cultural issue within that NHS trust.
Absolutely. 12:23 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Going to get to your calls coming on all the different topics. This is Talk.
The Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 12:26 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Philip Ingram with me, and you are on the phone lines and getting in my... You're in my DMs, in my texts and my tweets as well. John is on the line in Stoke-on-Trent and wants to talk about Andy Burnham and that by-election. A very, very good afternoon to you, John.
Hello.
Hello. What do you want to say?
Yeah. Well, Andy Burnham sort of blaming Maggie Thatcher, but he doesn't mention the unions, because I lived through the 60s and 70s, and the country was almost ungovernable.
Oh, yeah.
And Maggie Thatcher would never come to power if it wasn't for
trade unions. Because this is the thing, because one of the things he said is that, in that 4-minute broadcast, which is great, I mean, great, movie making, but it was, that we've had 40 years of failure. He was also, by the way, in government for a good whack of the time that Labour was in government.
Yeah. So just on a flippant note, the by-elections on Waterloo Day, and I think Bonaparte was the original socialist, so maybe Byrne meet us Waterloo.
What do you make of the guy the white van man who heckled Rachel Reeves and her response to him? What did you make of that?
Well, it's hard to make a living because you're paying. You've got your van, you've got all your costs of that before you do your work, and then you've got if you employ anybody, that's a nightmare. So it's not easy.
No, exactly. You can understand why people are frustrated. John, thank you very much indeed. Caroline is in London. Hi, Caroline.
Hi, Julia. Great. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. Yeah, carry on.
Oh, great. All right. What I want to say is all this stuff with Andy Burnham and all this palaver. Number one, it doesn't make any difference who leaves this country with Labour, and it doesn't matter actually who leaves this country unless they really are going to completely and utterly get rid of all the rot in this country. And boy, is that a good job. It's as simple as that.
It's more than a 5-year job, I've feared, especially if you've got the civil service working against you.
Well, exactly, and all this stuff is just theatre and it's distraction. We don't even know what they're doing behind the scenes. It's very, very scary. And for me, there's only one man that's got the guts and the intelligence to do this, and that's Rupert Lowe.
You're a Rupert Lowe fan. What if Rupert Lowe, Ben Habib, and all of these other people, what if they end up actually splitting the vote in some crucial seats?
Well, yeah, that is a worry. I mean, I'm hoping. Look, Rupert Lowe and Nigel Farage are never going to come together. We know that, and it's really sad that that's happened.
But how much of this is about principle and getting stuff done, and how much of this is just, let's face it, massive big male egos?
I agree with you. I think all of these men have egos, and that really worries me. However, Rupert has done dossiers, how he's going to deal with the civil service, how he's going to deal with the energy. He's an intelligent man.
He is. I've got no doubt at all about that. I've got a lot of time for him, and I love what he was doing with, on rape gangs, and he's been really outspoken. I just think, as someone who is, I consider myself mainstream according to the political situation now. I'm supposedly on the right, but I just think that you can't. People on all sides, people can't be letting their egos and their personal ambitions get in the way of doing the right thing for the country. I really don't.
Julia, we need women. We need people like you. Seriously, we need women.
I would last 5 minutes dealing with these people.
I would like 3 minutes. Come on, let's make it happen, Julia.
I have volunteered my services as a czar. I won't join a political party because I can't sign up to everything that any political party is saying. I will offer my services as a czar to any party. Well, I'm thinking Reform's the only one promising it right now. And actually, on some of the various things like the mass deportations and things like that, I would genuinely, because I really think that we should all do our bit, and but I just I think a lot of these egos need to get over themselves. Frankly.
No, I completely agree, but people are concentrating on the Andy Burnham, the West Streeting, what they've done. It's all irrelevant.
Yeah.
It is all complete. We don't have a parliament that runs this country anymore. And most people are asleep. And that is my biggest worry.
I understand. I think a lot of people share that. Caroline, thank you for that. Let's get some of your messages, particularly coming in about Rachel Reeves telling that white van man he's not very British after he heckled her over the government's failures at the petrol station. She's a moron, says Rob. Dan says it's always been a British tradition to heckle comedians. Clara says she's not represent a true British person. She's intent on taking away people's rights and driving us into poverty. Handing over our country to the EU, says Ian, is not British. Exactly. Gary says she needs to be told. To call her naive would be an understatement. She is not very British herself, says Rick, and she's a completely incompetent chancellor. Megan says the white van man saying he was very... the white van man saying that was very British, if you ask me. I think she meant, says Mark, that he was not very globalist. And Ava says he spoke for millions of UK citizens. And Pamela says, good for that man, I say. A lot of people saying that. Just to let you know, the Chancellor has been on her feet and she's been announcing this summer of savings. So that's basically 10 pence off your household weekly shop thanks to cuts on some tariffs of imported food. We've also got free bus travel for the month of August for 5 to 15-year-olds. Leave your 16 and 17-year-old at home, sod them. Also, she's announced that the rate of VAT on summer attractions will be temporarily cut from 20% to 5%. Well, that's great, except, by the way, those are sort of luxury things. They are, I mean, again, all this fuss, Rich Philip Ingram is still joining me about the Russian oil sanctions and basically allowing us to sort of have our diesel and our jet, our aviation fuel from India, which we know has come ultimately from Russia. That is about their abject fear that we are going to see people's holidays cancelled, people not be able to go away, because that's when people get really angry. They work hard all year, they're paying a shed load of tax, the cost of living's gone up, their rent, their mortgage, their energy bill, everything is, and food, everything's going up, and they work all year to get that week or 2 weeks of holiday in the sun. And if they don't get it, people are going to feel very understandably angry. But is this 20% down to 5% cut on VAT on summer attractions?
No, if she wants to have an effect, take 20% down to 10% on VAT on a litre of fuel.
Yeah.
Or
by the way, the
temporarily
pubs.
suspend it.
What about the pubs and the hospitality? We're crying out for that.
Yeah. You know, she's just getting it so
gimmicks.
Badly wrong. It is. It's soundbite gimmicks that idiots are going to think is going to do some good for the country. It's not. It's
not going to make a blind bit of difference.
No.
By the way, also, a lot of these summer attractions, they're actually owned by massive big companies. They're not the small businesses that are the backbone of this country.
Exactly.
Oh, how are they this bad? How are they this bad?
Do you know the sad thing? We predicted they were going to be very bad.
No, I've said this a million times. We said we knew they'd be bad. We never thought they'd be this bad.
Yeah, well, we knew they were going to be bad, and they're proving us right.
No, really are. They really, really are. Oh, right, now, we're talking of summer attractions. Oh, small point, the World Cup is almost upon us. The FIFA World Cup 2026 is almost here. And thanks to Adidas, the tournament's official match ball supplier, our friends at talkSPORT, just down the corridor, are giving you the chance to be there. Adidas is sending you and a friend to Dallas to see England v Croatia live on June the 17th. If you haven't got a friend, I'm happy to be your friend for that date. With return flights, accommodation, spending money, tickets and your very own Adidas official match ball trianda, be at England's first game in the FIFA World Cup at one of the world's best stadiums. Get ready for that winning feeling. Here's how to enter.
Get ready for that winning feeling. For your chance to win, head to talksportwin.com or text TALK to 83338. Texts and online entries cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close 1st of June 2026 at 4 p.m. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus UK residents only. This is a network promotion. See full terms and conditions at talksport.com/win. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now. Full T's and C's at win.talk.tv.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is indeed Talk, the Home of Common Sense, for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Philip Ingram still with us. And let's speak now to Helen Joyce. She's the Director of Advocacy at Sex Matters, the campaign group, and also the author of the brilliant book, Trans, Gender Identity and the New Battle for Women's Rights. A very good afternoon to you, Helen.
Hi, Julia.
I'm waiting for the day, and I mean this nicely, when the battle for women's rights is that battle, the one that we had. It's all been and gone. It seems to me that we're having to fight this battle day in, day out. I mean, we're in a better position than Australia, after speaking to Sal Grover and her Tickle v Giggle case and the latest court decision there. I spoke to her on the show earlier this week. But we've actually got, and this is very unusual, we have some good news to discuss today. What's the good news?
So apparently today is the day that finally the government, Bridget Phillipson, who is the Minister for Women and Equalities, is releasing guidance that was written by the Equality and Human Rights Commission and was given to her like nearly half a year ago. And this is statutory guidance that gives some, examples and some details on how you obey the law when the law is to do with the Equality Act. The law is the law, by the way. The Supreme Court said more than a year ago how we're to interpret the law. There was no need to wait for guidance.
They didn't also, they pointed out the law had always been the law. Now, you say the Equality Act.
That's right.
Most people don't spend their time worrying about this. This is down to really simple stuff. This is who's allowed to go into single-sex spaces when they are specifically for either men, there's only two sexes, or women. But crucially, this is the concern has been about women, because Bridget Phillipson, and it would seem Andy Burnham, the candidate for the by-election, who may be our Prime Minister in a matter of weeks, who knows, depending what happens, are of the view that men who identify as women, who they call trans women, but of course are simply trans-identified men, should be allowed to use women's toilets, changing rooms, etc., etc.
Yeah, so that misinterpretation of the law was sold by lobby groups like Stonewall. It was bought by businesses, by government, by all sorts of people. And employers and service providers thought that equality law meant that they had to let men who say they're women into women's spaces. And that became the rule really across the entire economy. And then along came the Supreme Court and said that had never been the law. And you would have thought that all those people would have stepped in line with the law, but instead they all went, Supreme Court, what's that? Oh, and there's guidance coming up. But Julia, the thing about this wretched guidance is that it's subsidiary to the law, but also it's for service providers. It's not for employers.
But also, crucially, isn't the guidance just, clarifying, OK, so this is the law, but this is what it means for you? It wasn't, you didn't have to wait for the guidance to know what the law was.
No, not at all. And it covers all the 9 protected characteristics, and it's meant to be for small service providers who might want to do something unusual to do with, say, 1 hour a week, that they're closing their doors to everybody except one particular group or whatever, and they need lots of examples to help them. You don't need examples on male and female toilets, and you really don't if you're an employer, because workplace regulations require you to provide single-sex toilets, and you shouldn't need them to know that you have to keep the men out of the ladies because they're men. It really isn't hard to explain. Anyway, they all settled on this excuse, and now this excuse is over.
Well, indeed, and we were told we couldn't have this guidance because they were just going through it legally. The lawyers had to look at it, and then they couldn't publish it because we had an election, a local election, Scottish and Welsh election. I mean, excuse after excuse after excuse, and eventually they've had to give in. And this is the thing, and very grudgingly as well. But this is the thing. It is extraordinary to me, although I feared this is what would happen after that Supreme Court ruling in April last year. I can't even say last April, that was a month ago. Last year, that we all thought, right, we're done. Oh, finally, right, everyone's been claiming the law says that men can pretend they're women and we treat them as if they're women. This made it very clear we didn't for the cases where we had single-sex provision, and there was a reason for it, because sex discrimination is legal where it is needed. For instance, single-sex, changing rooms and sport and things like that. There's a reason why we brought it in, because there are either risks to women or it's unfair for women otherwise. Women will not win any races or any sports at all if they're having to compete with men in their fields. But But we thought things would change. But we've still got, we had all those hospital cases of nurses being forced to get down to their bra and knickers while a man claiming he's a woman stands and watches them, and then being told that they were in the wrong and were bullies and harassing if they queried it. We've got still children at schools going into, boys being allowed in girls' toilets. We've got it in numerous workplaces, in leisure centres, government buildings. How on earth? I mean, I was under this bizarre illusion that we all had to obey the law, but I would have thought in particular public services paid for by the state, run by the government ultimately, you would even more onus on them to obey the law of the land.
I mean, welcome to our world at Sex Matters. We've spent the year since the Supreme Court judgment writing to people, writing to the head of the civil service, writing to government departments, writing to local authorities, writing to organisations that represent, say, as you say, gyms, the Charity Commission, all of these people, and saying the Supreme Court judgment was a model of clarity. Yeah. And what we have heard back almost universally is we're waiting for the EHRC guidance. We said to a government minister in a department where the toilets are not, like, you can see that they were the men's and women's toilets, but they have a sign put on top of them that says that they're for everybody. And if you go in, there are signs on the door that say, please close the door after you, because men don't. And so women walk into the toilets and there's a man there, having a wee. Anyway, we said to that minister, why are you waiting for the guidance? It's for service providers, not employers, and you're an employer, and anyway, you're the government. And the answer was, nevertheless, we are going to wait. It's scofflaw territory. Anyway, the wait is over. This damn guidance is out, and I really hope that they don't choose a different excuse to say for the next year.
I think they will use a different excuse, because you've got to remember they think that you and I are horrible, nasty, transphobic bigots.
Oh, Julia.
And according to Andy Burnham, who may be our Prime Minister in a few weeks' time, according to what he said in 2022, and there's no reason to think he's changed his views. He's made similar comments since, but on camera he's talked about how, he thinks absolutely trans, he calls them trans women, but trans-identified men should be allowed into women's toilets, and only a very small minority of people would object to that. And these are supposed feminists. Now, I've already asked Kelly J. Keane, who makes those wonderful T-shirts, the definition of a woman, adult, human, female. I've asked her to get one of those T-shirts made up. I'm sure it'll buy it. I'm a supposed feminist. I'm sure you are as well. Now, I've been talking to, representatives of different parties, and they're absolutely adamant. These are not issues for most voters. They do not care about this stuff. Even most women don't care about this stuff. And bringing this stuff up on the doorstep in a by-election or in a general election, people don't care. They're worried about the cost of living or immigration or the NHS, whatever. They don't care about this stuff. Do you think they're right?
Why would it be on the front pages of the papers that Andy Burnham said this stuff? But also, if nobody cares, then why are they working so hard to force the men into women's spaces? If it's a non-issue, don't bother. Just leave it the way it always was. No, some people do care a lot, and it's women who care, and we're being ignored. And we know from polling that we've done and that others have done that actually the majority of people say that no man should be allowed into women's spaces. I agree that it's not up there with the cost of living. It's not up there with unemployment or worries about NHS. But when it happens to you, when you are the person whose daughter has to compete with a boy in sports, or you are the person whose daughter has to undress in a changing room with men or something like that, then suddenly you care a lot. I think a lot of people just don't know it's even happening. It's one of those things that's so crazy that lots of people just don't realise it's happening. And I would say to those people, you say that other people they're going to find a new excuse. What I'd say to them is, OK, see you in court.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you're bringing a number of cases, sort of to encourage the others. But it is fascinating how we're told there are so few trans people. Why do you have to make a big deal? Where are they supposed to go? Trans people, trans-identified men, they call them trans women. They're not women. Don't use that word. That's our word. We're not a subset. That they're at risk if they go into the men's bathroom. And it's like, what are you saying?
Well, also that's an acknowledgement that men are a threat to women.
Exactly. I mean, this is the thing. And this is the thing. It does. The majority of men who don't pretend they think they're women are not a threat to women. But the reason why we have men banned from our changing rooms, our toilets and others, because there is a percentage of men who are perverts who want to watch women undress and go to the loo or whatever, and who will sexually assault or attempt to rape women and children in those scenarios.
Just privacy, Julia.
Yeah,
just privacy.
But also,
we don't want them there.
But there's a privacy issue there. But even that, the risk, we don't know which men are the predatory men, which is why we keep all of the men out, and most men, the vast majority of men, agree and understand that.
I mean, what a bubble Andy Burnham must be in that he thinks that the majority of people agree with him. I mean, one of the comments that I read in one of the news articles was very funny. It said, I don't think that most people on the streets where he's campaigning seriously think that men should be in women's changing rooms. I mean, that is not the majority position. It never has been. And how somebody who hopes to be Prime Minister can seriously be so ignorant of what people think. But he's not now, I'd say, after the last few days. I think he may have had an enlightening, eye-opening few days on this subject.
Absolutely. Well, I always thank you for your amazing work on this front. From Sex Matters, that's Helen Joyce. Thank you very much. Philip Ingram, listening to all of this. Again, do you think this is like a minority issue and no one really cares? It's just a culture war that people like Helen and I are fighting?
No, I think people do care enormously about it because, it shows an awful lot more that's wrong with the country.
Doesn't
And Helen turned around and said that his eyes have been opened in the last few days. Hopefully, opening eyes doesn't change beliefs. No. And the statement underneath that belief.
But all these people saying they believe that trans women are women, that men can become, they don't really believe it. So by that point, they're lying.
Some do. That's the trouble.
I don't think they do. I don't think they fundamentally do, because if they're straight, they don't actually want to go to bed with a man who claims he's a woman. And if they're gay, they don't want to go to bed with someone of the opposite sex who claims
they're lying and they're misleading the public. And
they're lying to themselves.
Yeah, and the trans activist groups that are out there that have turned this into something that has become sectarianised almost, are the ones that are actually doing the wider trans community more harm.
Absolutely. And by the way, people say, it's a hateful, Andy Burnham comment, it's a hateful debate. It's like, no, there's only one side that is threatening to kill people who disagree with them. Yeah. There's only one side, and it ain't my side. 12:48 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to be talking about this ongoing issue about social media harm, particularly for kids. This, as Ofcom has basically hit out at the likes of TikTok and YouTube, saying they are just not making their platforms safe enough for children to use. We'll talk about that up next with a mental health advocate and parenting coach, Lynn Crilly. This is Talk.
The Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense, so head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. 12:51 is the time. Ian Collins will be here in just a few moments. Tell us what's on his show. Let's talk right now about social media for children. Lots of calls for a ban on all social media for all children under the age of 16. It's, of course, been tried in Australia, although no evidence they're actually seeing a lot less of it. But there's also been a lot of pressure on social media companies to adjust what kids can see. Well, it turns out they're not doing it well enough. Ofcom has issued a new report today into how 5 of the largest social media and video platforms have responded to their demand for stronger protections for children. And their evidence, they say, published today, suggests they are still not safe enough. In particular, they called out TikTok and YouTube, but also they said that Meta, Snap and Roblox had actually agreed to stronger anti-grooming measures, but none of these sites are effectively enforcing minimum age rules with the government, and they're not actually making sure that children are not seeing harmful content. A survey by the regulator found more than 8 out of 10 children aged just 8 to 12 years old were still using at least one major service, with those, by the way, having a minimum age of 13. And an awful lot of them say they are seeing stuff that makes them uncomfortable or anxious and that they did not want to see. Well, let's talk about this with Lynn Crilly. She's a mental health advocate and parenting coach. Very good afternoon to you.
Hello, thanks for having me on.
Thank you for joining us. Well, as a parenting coach, I'm wondering whether you agree with me. I'm a little bit concerned that there are children going on sites that are for 13-year-olds plus. My daughter wasn't allowed on any site at all until she was 13 years old plus, and then it was monitored. If your kid is on this stuff, seeing stuff they shouldn't see on a site that they're not meant to be on, that's a parenting fail more than anything else, isn't it?
I think the sites are definitely unsafe, and they use generated content which can expose children to sexual content, dangerous challenges. People say it's the parents' fault. I think that we should all be accountable. I'm a grandma.
Well, no. I'm not accountable for someone else next door allowing their kid on their phone to have a social media app that they're not supposed to be on. That's a parenting fault.
Yes, and I think sometimes, yes, it is, but I think, yeah, it is. I suppose I agree, and I've got 4-year-old grandchildren, and my little Reggie was on TikTok the other day, not TikTok, YouTube.
Your grandchildren, how a 4-year-old grandchild on TikTok?
Sorry, YouTube.
YouTube. No, I don't care. You need to. And that's your daughter's son.
Yes.
You need to have a word with your daughter about her parenting.
He was on an education platform.
There's nothing educational on those websites for 4-year-olds. You know what's educational? Books, colouring books, playing, mum and dad talking to their child. Sorry, if that was my daughter's child, I'd be having words with her. Simple as that. Up your game.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I totally agree, and I think that the parents, I think grandparents, but I think they need to be, some of it's naivety on their part, and they need to be
laziness. It's laziness. They put their kids on their stuff. There you go. Stop talking to me. I'll give you some food. Put you on the phone. You'll stop making noise, and you won't mess about, and I can do what I want to do, which is usually sitting on my own phone. Come on.
Yeah, no, yeah, okay, I do.
But if we don't identify the problem, look, okay, I think there's a massive parenting issue. The parents aren't doing their job. They're not actually obeying the guidance and the laws themselves with their own kids. No 4-year-old, no 8-year-old is on any device that hasn't been bought by their parents, unless they're, I don't know, a child actor or something. They've got their own money. At which point, how much responsibility should be on these companies in terms of the algorithms that are driving stuff to these kids? Because the algorithms, even for me as an adult on X, I'm like, I don't want to see this stuff. Why am I being sent this stuff? So God knows what the kids are seeing.
I think technology is advancing quicker than the human brain can keep up with. Children's brains aren't mature enough to cope with what they're seeing, and I would wholly support a ban for under 16
across the board,
with everything. And having said what you've said, I do agree. When you go out for dinner, the kids are sitting on their iPads.
Yeah, I mean, it's horrible to watch. But the thing is, Australia have had this ban. They brought this ban in, and the evidence is that the kids are actually, they're on it anyway. The parents are either allowing it or they're sneaking round. They're using, VPNs to get round. They're going to be on this anyway, but often it's, secretive. They're on sites that are even worse. I mean, is there a mechanism? Do we need to actually say to these big companies, if you want to if you want to have these sites and you want to have children on them, you need to adjust the algorithms, or you will be banned full stop.
Yes, I do. And I think what the children are seeing and what they're being exposed to is a lot worse than they've seen before.
Yeah.
And yeah, they do. They have a duty of care. Of course they do, as do the people that they're watching. They have a duty of care as well.
But it's interesting that these algorithms are driving stuff, but they know that stuff that makes us angry or stuff that, you know, excites people, everything, that gets more numbers. You keep the kid or the adult on for longer. Stuff, you know, it's like the rage baiting, you know, that we see on social media, particularly on X. And a lot of people, they're not going in search of it. It just appears in their timeline. But when it comes to kids, that's even more scary, isn't it? That's like putting your kid down in front shop to watch a television show for half an hour. You know, they're watching Peppa Pig episodes, and then suddenly, you know, pornography comes on. Well, you didn't sign up to that. You didn't put them on a porn channel.
No. I think it should start at the top with the social media sites, all of them, not just TikTok, YouTube, all of them. I think they have a lot of work to do. I think that they should develop something that's online, that's free for parents, grandparents to learn. Because a lot of the parents, you know, I'm going to have to stick up for the parents here. A lot of them are doing their best. I agree with you. They're not doing their colouring. They're not doing their, you know, like we used to, obviously, because we didn't have social media. But a lot of the parents are working 2 jobs to keep the household going.
Loads of parents are working. Loads of parents are working.
Their kids in front of and a lot of it, I think, is that they don't understand, or they do when it gets too late.
Well, that's a good point. Lynn Crilly, appreciate you joining us, mental health advocate and parenting coach. Philip sounds like she needs to do a bit more parenting on her own daughter. I'm sorry, I'm just no nonsense on this. I think people need to be told it straight. I'm old-fashioned.
Well, yes, but you know, the terms and conditions for using these platforms are quite clear. So if you're allowing a youngster on there, you're breaking the terms and conditions, and therefore you should be removed from the platform permanently. But parents need to step up an awful lot more. Society needs to step up a lot more. The technology firms behind this can do a lot more.
Of course, and the algorithms. But I find the algorithms terrifying even as an adult. I mean, some of the stuff they're seeing. And they can do more. They can control everything that we see. They can absolutely
They do control everything we see.
Yeah, exactly.
But
even just down on X, you know, it keeps defaulting to For You instead of what I've chosen to follow certain people whose views I'm interested in and the replies. But it doesn't matter how many times I default it defaults back. They are choosing. They want to choose what I see, and I don't want them to.
Yeah, and parents do need to learn